at around 6:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Today is Tuesday, the 11th of March, 2025. Good morning and welcome to it, the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane and I'm here to deliver your Morning Brief. Come, let us spend the next 3 hours together, informing and engaging each other and sharpening each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. Here's what's coming up on the show over the next 3 hours. Well, in recent months, you've probably seen one or two videos, disturbing videos that is, of some dramatic cash and transit heist being carried out with powerful explosives being used or bands of men with high caliber machine guns. Well, if the statistics are anything to go by, it's quite likely that few of those videos you would have seen recently are of heists that occurred in KwaZulu-Natal. Right? And that's because in 2024, KwaZulu-Natal recorded the highest percentage of cash and transit robberies in the country, contributing some 27% of the total incidents that occurred nationally. The province has continued to see a sharp rise in the first few months of 2025. And these are figures that we are getting from the Cash and Transit Association of South Africa, that is SITASA. So at 8:20, we'll be unpacking that phenomenon. And I'll be speaking to Dr. Alice Murray, who is Incident and Analytics Manager at that association, that is the Cash in Transit Association of South Africa. So that conversation coming up at about 8:20. The other big story that we are focusing on this morning, 32 hours and counting. 32 hours and counting. Will he or will he not once again fail to deliver the national budget? That is the question around the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana. It would all be so fascinating, a fascinating political cliffhanger, really, if we were only watching from the sidelines and it wasn't the fact that we're actually living through it. We're living through that political cliffhanger, and it has such real and lived consequences for all of us. On the eve of Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's expected second take at trying to deliver the national budget, there's still no indication as to whether or not his proposals have been received well and have received cabinet support. It was expected that they would be discussed in cabinet at the beginning of this week, but we really have no indication as to whether or not there's been a final agreement on the proposals on the table. And in particular, much of the uncertainty centers around his initial plan, which was to raise value-added tax by some 2 percentage points. Towards the end of last week, into the weekend, you started hearing and reading reports that were suggesting that perhaps, given the various proposals that he had been given by the Government of National Unity Clearinghouse, and the committees, the various committees of cabinet that looked into what are the pathways for him to raise the revenue that he requires to fund the expenditure that is required in the budget. You started hearing towards the end of last week and into the weekend that perhaps it's still possible that we could be facing a VAT increase, but perhaps not on the scale and magnitude that he had initially proposed of a 2 percentage points, which would have taken VAT from 15% to 17% in the country. A lot of civil society organizations opposed to this, political parties opposed to this. The MK party staging a march yesterday in Pretoria protesting against this. So we'll bring into sharp focus the issue of the budget, what we know at this point, and the various permutations around raising revenue, but also the uncertainty, the unprecedented uncertainty that we face just some 32 hours ahead of the delivery of the budget speech, or the expected delivery of the budget speech, that is. I'll be speaking to Professor Andre Roux, and that conversation will be coming up at 7:20, so in the second hour of this show. So yesterday, one of our callers wanting us to bring into the spotlight issues of crime and policing in Mpumalanga. We're doing exactly that at about 6:45 this morning. Police in that province are investigating the murder of Dr. Ezrom Matumbu, a prominent pastor, radio presenter, and political party member, who was shot and killed in a suspected hit. The incident happened a few days ago on the R536 road near Cork Trust, between Mkhuhlu and the Kruger National Park in the Bushbuckridge municipality. His murder is the latest high-profile killing in the area, where some residents allege murder, particularly of prominent individuals, is on the rise. So just yesterday, police also in Bushbuckridge arresting a local police officer in connection with the killing of her husband, her alleged role therein. So I'll be joined at 6:45 by the Mpumalanga MEC for Community Safety, Security and Liaison, that is Jackie Macy, and that conversation coming up at about 6:45, in line with what was requested yesterday when we were taking your calls and having conversations with you about the issues that irk and press you in your localities. So that's how we're looking. That's the journey over the next 3 hours. But as usual, your regulars, the whole team on standby to serve you this morning. And Musa with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zaikan will be watching your sport throughout the morning. Dauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered. And Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. I'll welcome your calls throughout the morning. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes to the number 061 410 4107. I'm particularly keen to hear from you what your expectations are of the budget and what you have to say about the proposals. It's been presented as a stark choice between the social relief of distress grant being cut somewhat or not being made a permanent grant. Remember, it started out as an interim relief measure during the years of COVID, but it's clear now that it is fast becoming a permanent grant. So the stark choice that was presented in the last few days was to say it's either we cut on this SRD grant, which is a big expenditure item, or we face some tax hike or another. Political parties saying that there are other alternatives. They could include a tax on the wealthy in the country, an increase in corporate tax, but the finance minister is pushing back against that and saying that it would make the South African economy not to be competitive because already, according to him, our corporate tax rate is quite high compared to other OECD countries. So where will the money come from? Where will the money come from? Weigh in on those conversations. We are at SAFM Radio on X, SAFM Radio on Instagram and Facebook, and we are live on your YouTube channel. That is SAFM Radio. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Hey, Anne, good morning to you.
Good morning, Thulas.
What's leading on the diary this morning?
Well, the expectations ahead of tomorrow's delayed budget speech and the Finance Minister, Ino Godongwana, proposing that surprising trade-off, which is scrapping the social relief of distress grant in exchange for avoiding a value-added tax hike. We also have reaction from the Gauteng Health Department that's on recommendations that was made by the Health Ombud and the Helen Joseph about the Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg, and the Office of the Health Standards Compliance and the Health Ombud released the findings of an investigation into allegations yesterday against the hospital, and they found challenges related to human resources, lack of governance, staff shortages, as well as cleanliness. The South African Human Rights Commission is convening an investigative inquiry into scholar transport challenges in the Northwest, a 3-day inquiry in Mafikeng, and it follows numerous complaints that's about the inadequate, unreliable and unsafe transport for learners which tend to negatively impact their right to basic education. The Jocelyn Smith kidnapping case continues at the Circuit High Court in Saldanha, and the accused include Jocelyn's mother, Kelly Smith, her mother's boyfriend, Jacqueline Apollos, and Stevino van Rijn. Jocelyn, we know, went missing from the Middelpos informal settlement in February last year. Ongoing taxi disputes in Johannesburg, which have turned deadly, and with reports of 2 fatalities in Soweto following a scuffle over routes between the Witwatersrand Taxi Association and the Mansfield Dube West Taxi Association. The violence has also led to road blockages, and which may continue today. The United Africans Transformation Party is today marching to the Limpopo Provincial Police Headquarters, and this is to demand justice and accountability from the authorities. They're marching under the banner "Justice Delayed is Justice Corrupt," and the party calling for an end to delayed justice and greater transparency in the justice system. So some of the stories that we will be focusing on this morning.
2 stories very quickly that I want to comment on. It's a difficult day if you're a commuter in Johannesburg, right? Particularly in the south. You've got that issue that you're talking about, the clashes between the taxi associations, plus you have the Metro bus strike also.
Yes.
Very
quite challenging morning.
And then you talked about the Human Rights Commission probing scholar transport in the Northwest. I think that's a really important body of work, and I suspect that they might want to expand it beyond the Northwest.
True. Especially, a number of provinces, if you look at the Eastern Cape, the Free State, all struggling.
Yeah. All of those issues need to be brought into the spotlight. Thank you for that. That's Ann Musa. You'll be hearing from Ann every half hour. She'll give you your updates on the news here on the Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
At 18 minutes after 6, let's give you a sense of how your weather will be looking on this Tuesday. The warnings that have come through from the South African Weather Service, there's just one, and it's a fire danger warning. It says extremely high fire danger conditions are expected over the northern parts of the Northern Cape. The rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be cloudy with scattered thunder showers, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon with a minimum of 19 and a maximum of 29. Johannesburg, cloudy with scattered thunder showers, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, 18 to 28. Mbombela, partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with scattered afternoon showers and thunder showers, 20 to 28. Polokwane will be partly cloudy with isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers, 19 to 29. Mahikeng, partly cloudy, 16 to 29. Bloemfontein will be partly cloudy, 17 to 27. Kimberley, partly cloudy, 16 to 32. Uppington, fine, 19 to 36. Cape Town, partly cloudy, becoming fine, 18 to 27. George will be cloudy with light rain in the morning, 30% chance of that, becoming partly cloudy with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 25. Gqeberha will be partly cloudy with showers and rain, and 30% chance of that happening in the morning, and the minimum there will be 18 with a maximum of 24. East London will be partly cloudy with showers at times 17 to 27. Durban, partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 20 to 27. Richards Bay will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 21 to 27. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will have morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 15 to 24.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
After what transpired in Loftus last month, the boys of Coach Rivero believe this is the perfect time for revenge against Masandawana. But the highly confident Brazilians want to double the Buccaneers' pain. As Mpumalanga versus Kabuyelo. This is a massive meeting of giants, the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzansi's beautiful game, Orlando Pirates versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Sunday, 16 March at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. First touch ladies have a tough assignment to demonstrate the importance of a good first touch. Meanwhile, Tia's Galaxy Queens refuse to settle for anything less than 3 points. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the thrilling battle between First Touch ladies and Tia's Galaxy Queens on Saturday, 15 March at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Jazz lovers, the wait is over. Africa's grandest gathering returns on the 25th to the 26th of April at the Cape Town International Convention Center. Experience 2 nights of soul-stirring jazz, electrifying collaborations, and over 30 world-class artists across 4 iconic stages. Don't miss this unforgettable musical experience. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Brought to you by Independent Media, proud media partner of the Cape Town International Jazz Festival.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 minutes after 6. The numbers are in, and Canada has its next Prime Minister designate. And it is former central banker Mark Carney, who's emerged victorious in the country's Liberal Party leadership campaign. He is now set to take over from the outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at a yet undisclosed date, allowing for a smooth transition between the two leaders. Importantly, he will lead his party into the country's next election expected by October this year. He also takes over during a time of great turmoil, with Canada locked in a ruinous tariff war with the United States. I'm joined now by Devin Murugan. You'll know him. He's a former SABC News anchor and journalist. He's now based in Toronto, Canada, and working for the Halton News in that country. Good morning to you, Devin, and thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for staying up late in Canada. So, former central banker aptly describes Mark Carney, doesn't it? And that's because he's held the position in 2 different countries.
Yeah, that's quite true. Good morning, Tulas. I mean, look, he's got a remarkable background, Mark Carney. He's never held public office. That's something quite extraordinary. He pitched himself throughout the campaign, which was a short one, by the way, as an outsider. And you're quite right. You know, he was the central bank governor of Canada, 2008, and in 2013 he was the central bank governor of England, the Bank of England, and incidentally he worked for Goldman Sachs for 13 years. So here's a man who's steeped in economics. He knows his stuff in that regard, and quite an apt time to come in and win the leadership race in the Liberal Party, to us.
Kind of telling, Devin, that the immediate next line that I've seen in terms of analysis, it's quite telling of the times that we are living in, that the immediate next line of analysis always asks what his stance and his posture will be towards the neighbor to the south of Canada, the United States, particularly its leader, Donald Trump. He's been talking tough, hasn't he, about what his approach will be in dealing with the tariffs, as well as dealing with the leadership style of Donald Trump.
Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, for starters, some experts believe Carney's background could make him uniquely suited for the job as Canada grapples, you're quite right, with this souring relationship with the U.S. and the escalating trade war. Now, it's amazing. I mean, the U.S. trade tariff, if held in place for an extended period of time, to us, it could push Canada's fragile economy into a recession. And that's why we believe that, you know, his victory for the Liberal Party, I think even the polls are showing that Carney was viewed as the most capable dealing with this economic fallout of this Trump-inspired trade war. He has come out, by the way, guns blazing, to answer your question, that Canada must be respected. A dollar-for-dollar sort of fight back or retaliation when it comes to the tariffs. And what's interesting about this is that many people do believe, as far as the polls are concerned, that he's capable of doing this given his background. The Liberal Party, for example, just had a sudden surge in recent weeks in popularity, where they were pretty much falling down to pieces. The last time we spoke, if you can remember, a few weeks ago, when Justin Trudeau had left the party, or left his position as Prime Minister.
Yeah. And among the key values that he, at least in his acceptance speech that he advanced, is the fiscal responsibility, social justice, and international leadership. Tell me how he's explaining that, including what he's proposing around creating trading relationships with, and he was underscoring here, reliable trading partners.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mark Carney, it looks, if you take a look at the analysts, what they are saying is that he's going to be, let's put it, less left than Justin Trudeau was. So this is a sort of right-leaning Liberal Party head here. And it's interesting you bring up the issues of spending, because he wants to take a much more prudent approach to this. I mean, look, Canada has a housing crisis. Housing is unaffordable. The healthcare is in a particular situation. And living costs, as you aptly put it, they're rising. So he's going to take a very much prudent approach, and at the same time, he's not going to let money seep through the cracks of the trade war that Donald Trump has unleashed on Canada. So it's going to be very interesting to see his posture, and I suppose that's one of the reasons why much of the Liberal leadership, and certainly the Liberals down on the ground, think he may just be the one for this. But he has been. I mean, look, he's not a very personable, as personable as Justin Trudeau. He holds back somewhat, but he certainly does have the acumen, and I think people know that.
Speaking of the acumen, I mean, he's an outsider, as you were saying, in terms of the world of politics, having come from corporate as well as the world of central banking. But it's clear that he understands the task at hand, at least as far as the elections are concerned. He went all in against the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, I mean, on that election win, Tulas, I mean, 86% of the vote went to Mark Carney. The closest second was the former Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, also Liberal, coming in a distant second, 8% of the vote. So that gives you a kind of an idea on the popularity.
But so that's within the Liberal Party contest, yeah?
That's within the Liberal Party contest, yeah. I mean, as far as moving outside of that is concerned, Thursday, Friday, that's what the experts or the analysts are saying could be where the handover to power to Prime Minister takes place, which is just a few days from now. But, you know, like I said, had Donald Trump not happened to Canada, I think that the gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives would have been a much, much wider one. It was a given that the Conservatives would take, the next leadership of Canada, and no doubt they still might do that. But with Mark Carney coming in at such a time that we needed a particular figure to deal with what's happening south of the border, I think many people now have got their eyebrows raised to say, hey, the Liberals might just be in for a chance here. Who knows?
Sure. He could be the man of the moment. So, Devin, just as we wrap up then, give me a bit more on the context. So last time you and I spoke, we were talking about what Trump was saying about Canada, the ambitions to have it as the 51st state of the United States, etc. But things have progressed quite a lot since then. Tell me about this trade war and the tariffs, just how they are playing themselves out in localities where you are.
That's a very interesting question. Just got back, by the way, if I can just boil this down to the grassroots community level for a second. We've got big retailers in a small little town just outside Toronto called Oakville. It's in the Halton area. That's where I reside at the moment. And we have these big retailers called Costco and Food Basics. They're huge retailers. What's very interesting is that on the shelves, you'll find that the American, let's put it, onions, for example, that come across the border, they fill up on the shelf. You look next to it, Canadian onions, completely empty. And what does that tell you? People are really taking the Buy Canada thing quite seriously. I mean, I haven't seen this back home where you have such a sense of, patriotism in this type of a context where people are going all out, Buy Canada, and you can see it on the ground.
Yeah.
So I mean that opens up the door for me to talk about the tariffs. Look, I think people are really fed up about this on-off tariffs. After every 30 days comes in, the tariffs knocks in 2 days later. Donald Trump holds back a little bit, and a few items are off the shelf for tariffs or exempted. And I think even if you look at the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, very big guy in politics here as well, he's had enough. He says that whatever retaliatory tariffs we're putting onto America will stay until America completely pulls back on the tariffs. So Canada is really, really taking a very strong posture against this year, from the ground right up until the political leadership. And this on and off thing that Donald Trump is doing, I don't think it's going down very well here in Canada.
Yeah, and that rallying cry of Canada Strong echoing across the board, really. Thank you for that. That's Devin Murugan, a former SABC News anchor and journalist, now based in Toronto, Canada. He works there for the Halton News. It brings us to 6:31. Let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the Gauteng Health Department says it's attending to the recommendations made by the Health Ombud about the Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg. The Office of Health Standards Compliance and the Health Ombud released the findings of an investigation into allegations against the tertiary hospital. The ANC has reaffirmed its confidence in the party's Free State Provincial Executive Committee. The Secretary-General, Figle Mbalula, emphasized the province, unlike Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, has managed to retain its slight majority after the 2024 general elections, despite taking a significant knock nationally. And markets continue their sharp slide in the United States as investors grew increasingly concerned about a possible recession caused by President Donald Trump's tariff policies. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a reminder of what is loading as a heavy backlog already. Main and Sloane, those lights northern parts of Joburg, Bryanston side are down. That route really does badly back up. It's all that traffic coming through from the Kyalami side out of Lone Hill that wants to get through to Bryanston Sandton. It is already heavy between Lone Hill Boulevard and Sloane Street. If you take that route, just make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. We'll probably see traffic backlogging towards the Uskay River Bridge, if not beyond. The run out of Durban to Pietermaritzburg along the N3, still worth seriously avoiding. There is a major delay between Marion Hill Plaza and Cliffdale. There's a crash after Shongweni. There's a breakdown before you get to Cliffdale, and it's a big backlog of traffic that formed up during an early morning closure for truck rush recovery. So it is bad. Either travel later or take the old road. If you just set up off the N3 now and you get to Marion Hill Plaza, you will probably regret that decision. It's a monumental backlog there. Cape Town, M7 out of Jake's Covell out of Mitchell's Plain. Very slow. It's a busy route these days, but there's been a crash between Highlands Drive and the R300 a short time ago. It was an over 40-minute delay to get up and get through that queue. All the side roads, the approaches like Veltevreden Road that goes out to Philippi, Highlands Drive, Morgenstead, they're all badly backed up to get into that M7, and a lot of traffic going south to avoid it, ending up jamming the Strandfontein area. Also worth a note, the N2 driving into Cape Town today, very heavy from Spine Road at Khayelitsha, basically traffic all the way through to Rappenberg Road in the Pinelands area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. So in our first update, we start not news from, the pitch and the field, but rather boardroom related, and Cricket South Africa making it clear that they are taking transformation seriously.
Very seriously. And I think next time maybe they need to double check the team sheets before they get onto the field, before the toss, in fact. And I don't know who, the transformation rules are very clear to us, but I don't know how this is going to pan out. The fine is quite big. But who didn't read the fine print is the question.
Yep.
And 500,000, that's what Cricket South Africa delivered. Their harshest punishments, docking the Warriors crucial points in the One-Day Cup, finding them that record-breaking amount for failing to meet transformation requirements. The Eastern Cape team fielded 6 players of colour, but only 2 were of the black African players, 1 short of the required 3. So as a result, they are out of the playoff race. Their points handed to the Dolphins. The Warriors aren't backing down. They want to challenge the decision, saying it's unfair given that other teams have slipped up before without similar consequences. Let's go to soccer news. Eric Tinkler has been confirmed as the new Sekekuna United coach, replacing Lehlonolo Siema, and will be thrown into the deep end tomorrow for his debut when they take on Maruma Gallants away in Bloemfontein. Tinkler arrived with former left-back and free-kick specialist Mark van Heerden as his assistant, while Paulus Masihe will stay on, but Ketamo Tembo departs. Tinkler takes over Sekekuna, sitting fourth in the Betway Premiership standings, only behind third place Stellenbosch on goal difference. In the meantime, South Africa's World Cup rivals Benin, they've named their squad for the Group C qualifiers later this month, leaving out one of their stalwart defenders and calling up an untested teenager. Benin will take on Zimbabwe at Durban's Moses Mabhida Stadium on the 21st of March and then host South Africa in Abidjan on the 25th of March in the next two qualifiers, seeking to keep up their hopes for a place in the 2026 finals in North America. Elsewhere, Arne Slot believes his Liverpool side are good enough to reach the Champions League final ahead of the conclusion of their last 16 tie against Paris Saint-Germain.
The intensity they play that with, combined with the quality they have, because let's be honest, we are talking here about probably the richest club, or maybe there's one richer club a bit further ahead, but so they have so much quality and a great manager, because he lets the team play in a way that it's not easy to play against this team, and he brings the best out of every player, and he brings incredible work rate in the team.
And Liverpool currently lead in aggregate 1-0. Let's go to cycling. Belgium's Tim Merlier sprinted to victory for the second day in a row at the 2025 Paris-Nice yesterday, outpacing the French rider Emilien Genier and Mads Pedersen of Denmark after Axel Zingel had made an early dash to the finish line in Bellade, north-central France. And finally, some tennis action from Indian Wells. The third seed Coco Gauff reaching the round of 16, defeating Maria Sakkari 7-6, 6-2. We'll have more sport here on the Morning Brief. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
For our first update with Ndauleng Lechela. Good morning to you, Ndauleng. Let's start with banking news. Tell me why HSBC is turning caution on U.S. stocks.
It seems like they're just concerned about, the tariffs and how that may affect those equities in particular. They are now saying they're seeing a better opportunity outside of America. The group has downgraded its rating on U.S. stocks to neutral from overweight. In contrast, the bank turned bullish on European stocks, excluding those in the UK, upgrading its rating to overweight from underweight. The move reflects growing uncertainty around the Trump administration's trade policies and a potential shift in investor sentiment towards Europe. A proposed $1.2 trillion European fiscal stimulus package and China's rising prominence in the tech sector may also be driving this trend. Now, over the past few weeks, the S&P 500 has retreated from the record high it hit mid-February, fueled by worries that the trade war will erode corporate profits and slow growth. According to HSBC's global equity strategist, Alistair Pinder, the group is not negative on U.S. stocks. It just sees more attractive opportunities elsewhere.
If I'm not mistaken, is Novo Nordisk this company behind Ozempic? Is it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Tell me about them and their new drug trial, their newest drug trial. You're saying that it has failed to impress the markets and that is sort of making them lose steam somewhat.
That's right, Tula. So as you mentioned, they do house drugs like Ozempic, which is their main GLP medication for diabetes patients. They also have Wegovy, which is directed specifically to weight loss. And now they're developing a new weight loss drug called CagriSema. That drug in particular was the one that failed to excite markets. The pharmaceutical giant released data from a late stage trial of its obesity drug candidate that or rather, those results sparked concerns that rival Eli Lilly may be gaining ground in the weight loss market. Investors had high hopes for CagriSema, that new weight loss drug they are trialing. But that's not really coming through, as the data showed that CagriSema delivered better weight loss than Wegovy. However, it failed to meet expectations. In a Reuters article, Novo shareholder Marcus Mans said the company's mistake was setting the bar too high for CagriSema, further saying that the market wants Novo to have the best weight loss agent, but that's not the case. Mans noted that the market is punishing Novo because CagriSema's weight loss potential is on par with Eli Lilly's Mounjaro rather than surpassing it. Now, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly dominate the GLP medication market, collectively holding a market share of 99%. But Novo Nordisk's stock price took a hit yesterday, falling over 8% by the end of trade following the release of its latest trial data.
All right, Ntauling, please give us our first roundup of market activity for this morning.
Thulas, recession fears are back on the table as investors assess the impact of President Trump's policies on the global economy. This sparked a global sell-off with U.S. stocks plunging into the red. The Nasdaq took the biggest hit yesterday, closing 4% lower. That sell-off also filtering through to local markets with the JSE in the red. The all-share shed 1.4% at the close, fueled by losses in the industrial 25, which is down 1.9%. The rand, in the meantime, holding up while trading at 18.31 to the dollar, and this despite the risk-off sentiment. And also, it's a sea of red in Asia as those growth fears continue to rattle markets.
All right, thank you for that. We'll hear from you in the second hour. That's Ntauling Lechela. Look out for her second update for you, and that's coming up just after 7:30 here on the Morning Brief.
Dr. Malava, you are a genius, man.
Dr. Malava speaking. How can I soothe your heart today?
Hey, Doc. My Bezo says I'm not romantic enough, and with Valentine's Day coming up, I want to brush up on my romantic talk.
Ah, Uncle Mo, I've got you covered. Or better yet, I'll have you improve on your game and have you all set.
Oh, Doc, what are you saying now?
Grab a tennis racket, a bottle of water, and some fresh green fluffy tennis balls, malume.
Tennis racket, tennis balls. How is that supposed to help?
In the arena, Serena Williams will have you saying 15 love, 30 love, 40 love. It's love everywhere, malume. Catch in the arena. Serena Williams, Sundays at 7 p.m. Starts 9 February, only on S3.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
The citizens are not willing to settle for anything less than a win.
And now it's with Haaland and on to Foden. Foden to finish the game. And he does.
However, the Seagulls want to triple their efforts to collect valuable points against reigning champs.
Lovely touch for Mitoma. Mitoma could be away. Here it is. Mitoma one-on-one. Mitoma, delightful.
This is the Premier League. Witness the superb contest, Manchester City FC versus Brighton and Hove Albion FC on Saturday, 15 March at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
16 minutes to 7 on this Tuesday morning. Police in Mpumalanga are investigating the murder of Dr. Ezrom Matumbu, a prominent pastor, radio presenter, and political party member, that is. He belonged to Action SA, actually. He was shot and killed in a suspected hit. The incident occurred on the R536 road near Cork Trust between Mkhuhlu and the Kruger National Park in the Bushbuck Ridge municipality. His murder is the latest high-profile killing in the area where some residents allege murder particularly of prominent individuals, is on the rise. Just yesterday, police in Bushbuckridge arrested a local police officer in connection with the killing of her husband. I'm joined now by the Mpumalanga MEC for Community Safety, Security and Liaison, that is Jackie Macy. Good morning to you, MEC, and thank you for your time. So when I look at the crime stats, your province doesn't really feature even in the top 30 stations for the 17 community reported crimes. But nevertheless, from the calls we took yesterday, it would seem many in your province feel quite unsafe. How does this latest murder of Dr. Esrom Matumbu fit in with that sense of a lack of safety in areas such as Mkhuhlu and Bushbuckridge?
Thank you very much, my brother Thulas, and good morning to you and good morning to your listeners at home. Indeed, as you have indicated, we're a bit concerned with what is happening around Bushbuckridge. Remember the area that we are talking about, the police station that is Mkhuhlu in particular in Bushbuckridge fall under Calcutta Police Station Precinct. In our Calcutta Police Station features among the top 30 police stations in the province. They are not featured in the national stats, the top national, but in the top 30 police in the province. Those who are featuring in the top 30 nationally is Tonga Police Station. It's also Pinari Police Station, Kapogweni Station, and also Forsman Police Station in Witbank. I can safely say indeed that if you look at the area where Bushbuckridge is situated, it's situated near Kruger National Park, and most of the things that are happening, because now, remember, there was an increase at a particular time of poaching around Kruger National Park. Now we have managed to cap, I'm not saying we have eradicated completely the issue of poaching around Kruger National Park, but now they are coming to on the site now to come and use these weapons against the community. However, I must indicate that in terms of the recent stats that was released, we are managing the issue of murder, particular murder. We have reduced the murder with about 28%. So compared to the last year on the same time.
Sure.
So we are saying we are managing the situation. Hence, we have alluded to the fact that we have already arrested one of our police force member within Bushbuckridge who is linked to this heinous crime that are being committed. But what I can assure you is that indeed the crime do happen not in isolation with Bushbuckridge, it's all in other part of the province and also part of the country. But we are able to make breakthrough. Even the case of Dr. Matumbu. Dr. Matumbu.
Yes.
We are going to, I can promise you, are going to make a breakthrough in this regard. But
Is there a sense, MEC, that a couple of years ago, it used to be that Mpumalanga was synonymous with the killing of prominent activists and, particularly political activists. And from the call that we took yesterday, one of our listeners was talking about murders of prominent people. Is there a sense that we are returning to that particular scenario where prominent, particularly political activists, Dr. Matumbu was a member of Action SA, as I say, that is making a return in the province?
I cannot confirm that, but what I can say, to me, as the MEC of Community Safety in the Mpumalanga province, I'm dealing with any matter that is, whether crime is a crime, it doesn't look whether a person, or in particular the murder, it doesn't look whether the person is prominent or not prominent. Murder is murder to me. That is the crime that is being committed. We need to pursue that on that space. However, we must indicate that I don't think that we are returning to that, because indeed we cannot escape or deny the fact that in society we are not equal. Some they will view other person as high profile. Some they will view other person not being high profile.
Lastly, the other crime that I wanted to tease out with you, the sense that I got as well, was that you seemed to be losing control over cash in transit heists. You had quite a number of incidents, particularly on the N4, just after you pass Mbombela, in the direction just after Mbombela, that N4 route. Last year, you had quite a number of those incidents in areas closer to Barberton and the likes. What's happening there? Why can't you seem to get a handle on cash in transit heists?
The information, recently information, say we are from October to up to date, we have just recorded 2 incidents of CIT, that is crash in transit. It means we are managing it very well if you compare to the previous times. So I can assure you as well, my brother Thulas, indeed, that on that space we are winning the battle, because remember, the other issue that we have challenged with is the issue of GBV and us, because those GBV, it's informed by most of the time too much circulation of alcohol. But when you deal with CIT, you need a person who is sober. On that space, you are able to manage. It's not getting out of hand in terms of the facts and the stats that is on the table.
All right. MEC, thank you for your time this morning. That's the Mpumalanga MEC for Community Safety, Security and Liaison. That's Jackie Macy.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
If you're on your way to the airport, coming out of Joburg, heading for flight connections at OR Tambo, just note there is a crash scene on the R24 before you get to the Barber Road exit, and that's pushing a queue almost back as far as the Edenvale exit, so very slow. Also, the run-in from Protea Glen, Lenasia heavy this morning. There's a collision as you come off the N12 Potch Highway onto the N1 North, and then there's a little sort of police incident down through Deepcliff. So really from the Golden Highway N12, Eldorado Parkside, all the way through down to Uncle Charlie's, massive delays that side as well. Lights are out, Main and Sloane. That's a big queue already in from the Lone Hill side. That'll probably work back towards the Yatske River before we're done. N1 South coming out of Pretoria, Montana down towards the N4, Emelathleli Highway. That's heavy. About a 50-minute wait to get between Marion Hill Plaza and Cliffdale on the N3. It's all happening down there today. An earlier closure for truck crash recovery, and now another crash around Shongweni. A breakdown before you get to Cliffdale, and then, of course, the long-term works. Either take the old road or travel later. That's a massive delay on your way to Pietermaritzburg this morning. Cape Town, the earlier crash on the M7 north at Mitchell's Plain towards the R300 seems to be cleared, but it's a long queue coming up that M7. Baden-Powell coming through from the bottom of Mitchell's Plain through to Strandfontein Road's quite heavy, and lengthy backlogs this morning on the M5. There's a real heavy queue from Southfield Parkwood area all the way up through Kenilworth, Rondebosch, right through to the N2 highway exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
S3 and Lorna Maseko are adding flavor to your Wednesday evenings. Lorna invites you on a journey of discovering new ways of transforming South African pantry staples into delectable and budget-friendly meals. From reimagining traditional South African dishes to infusing global inspirations, Lorna's inventive recipes and seasoned cooking tips inspire creativity and will empower viewers to navigate the kitchen with savvy resourcefulness. Tune into Lorna's Pantry, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Hey neighbor, what happened to you last night? We were vibing, watching the game, and then our team scored, and the next thing you were gone.
Askies, I missed the goal. You know, just before our team scored, Eskom came and then our electricity was disconnected.
Yo, so much drama. What happened?
We got a fine for buying electricity tokens from an illegal vendor.
And then your fancy orange jumpsuit?
Oh, just in case I get arrested for not paying the fine, Pela.
Ungathatha chance. Buy your electricity legally. Stop buying electricity from illegal vendors and tampering with electricity meters.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let me start with a call from Khotso in Maluti Apofung. Good morning to you, Khotso. We were talking a bit earlier on about taxi wars and the violence that is taking place in Soweto. That's a subject you want to weigh in on this morning. Good morning.
Goeiemôre Thulasizwe Simelane. Hoe gaan dit?
Goed, dank je. Hoe gaan dit met u?
Thulisi.
Yes.
I think now we have to ask ourselves as a people why the war between Nandue and Wata taking place time and again.
Yeah.
Who caused Nandue and Wata fighting each other? Because if I remember well, 10 years back, we were not having the taxi association so-called Nandue in Soweto. Nandue was sponsored by the JMPD, SAPS, and ANC official. Nandue is operating. Listen, you don't know. A person who know what I'm talking about is a Mpumalanga. I don't know whether you know him.
Yes.
It's unfortunately that you deny, but you don't know him.
No. I won't deny. I won't deny that I know Habis Musunkut. He was MEC of Transport in Gauteng and had a particularly tough stance. But what I was exclaiming about when Khotso is, I would want you to say more about why you are asserting that Nandue is a product of JMPD and ANC officials. Why do you say that? Where's the evidence for that?
Allow me to build my story in order for you to understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Who issued a Nandue? Because Nandue is coming from a water, and they were on the same office as a taxi association. Hey, so why we don't implement the recommendation of the commission? Because exactly in Soweto, we don't have the taxi association so-called Nandue. And the issue of Nandue and water is no longer now Nita Santago or a taxi operator. It needs the people of Soweto to unite.
Sure,
gotcha. To remove the corruption government in order to bring a stability in Soweto.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying, Khotso, but it still doesn't prove... It still doesn't prove your claim that it was created by JMPD and the ANC, though.
Yes, Nandue is sponsored by JMPD. The JMPD, they are owning the taxis under the Nandue.
Okay.
The SAPS are owning, listen, the SAPS are owning the taxis under a Nandue. The officials who issued unlawful operating license for Nandue of ANC. They are owning the taxis on
Khotso, let me ask you how you know what you are saying. Are you in the taxi industry yourself?
I will never disclose my information because even you don't ask a police and Veik where is he taking the information. So why you want me to disclose?
No, man, Khotso, I always do when I have someone calling in that sounds like they have extra information than, the average person. You naturally have to ask, where do you get your information from? Are you in the industry?
Most of the time I like to say, if you are the man you are sleeping, don't think all the men are sleeping. So the issue of Nandue,
all right. I've heard you.
And water is very simple and easy. Let's implement the recommendation of the commission that was formed by Mpumalanga.
Gotcha.
Then we'll get rid of the war between water and Nandue because we don't have a taxi association so-called Nandue in Soweto.
Let's leave it there. That's Khotso in Maluti Apofung there. Speaking in riddles, not wanting to disclose whether or not he's in the taxi industry, but also making some contentions, which I did challenge about, the SAPS, JMPD, and what he says are ANC officials. You make of that what you want. His answer as to what evidence he has. When I asked him that, what evidence he has of the involvement of those people in the formation of one of the taxi associations in Soweto. Let me take one voice note that has to do with the SRD grant, the stark choice being made, being presented that it's either we reduce the SRD grant or we face the prospect of a tax hike to fund it all.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. It's Robert Jimiskin. I think this government is not working to save South Africans. It's for itself, because now they want to cut off the SRD. Why they don't minimize the cabinet? All those deputy ministers must come out and save the South African. I thank you.
No, thank you for that. But in fairness, there's not been, other than the reported remarks of the finance minister that says the choice is between cutting down the SRD and increasing VAT or increasing taxes. But in general, the thrust of government has not been to get rid of the SRD grant. In fact, it seems to have been the opposite, in that it started out as an interim relief measure, but you have seen over the years that it has become something of a permanent one. Of course, there's a different story around the criteria, which was found to be unconstitutional, right, by that court judgment, which government says they will be challenging. We'll take a few more of your calls a bit later on the show, but for now, let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Health Department attends to issues raised by Helen Joseph Hospital findings, and ANC affirms support for the Free State Provincial Executive Committee. Good morning. The Gauteng Health Department says it's attending to the recommendations made by the Health Ombud about the Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg. The Office of Health Standards Compliance and the Health Ombud released the findings of an investigation into allegations against the tertiary hospital. They found challenges related to human resources, lack of governance, staff shortages and cleanliness. The investigation was initiated after broadcaster Thomas Holmes, known as Tom London, posted videos of himself complaining about the bad treatment by healthcare workers and the state of the hospital. Gauteng Health Department spokesperson Mutalatale Mudiba says work is being done by the department to attend to issues raised by the report.
It must be pointed out that we've already initiated a province-wide interventions that are aimed at addressing the identified issues. Interventions include the reviewing of the organizational structure, which is currently awaiting approval processes, while the infrastructure function within the department has been strengthened with the appointment of a Deputy Director General. And the process of the filling of the CEO post at Helen Joseph is prioritized for the new financial year.
The ANC has reaffirmed its confidence in the party's Free State Provincial Executive Committee. The ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula emphasized the province, unlike Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, has managed to retain its slight majority after the 2024 general elections, despite taking a significant knock nationally. Mbalula addressed the media in Bloemfontein yesterday as he wrapped up the National Working Committee's 3-day visit to the province. Mbalula says the PEC has been given a mandate to unite the party.
The recent engagements by the National Working Committee with ANC structures in the province reaffirmed the movement's commitment to addressing these concerns head-on and rebuilding the trust with communities. We equally reaffirm our confidence in the leadership of the ANC in the province, led by Mxolisi Tukwana as the chairperson and Pulediso Mutsweneng as the provincial secretary of the province. The ANC recognizes the serious service delivery challenges facing many communities in the Free State.
Action SA MP Alan Beasley says they are not going to support any VAT increase by the Finance Minister Ino Godongwana when he tables the 2025 budget tomorrow. Beasley has described any proposals for tax increase as ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous to expect South Africans to pay for all the corruption, incompetence and wastage currently going on in government departments and government entities on scope, on term and on the Finance Committee and on the Auditor General. I've just seen firsthand how much corruption, wastage and incompetence there is in the system. I mean, it's morally incomprehensible that we've got a cabinet of 75 members who live a life of opulence. You know, it's just, there's 50% of South African households are going to go to bed hungry tonight. Yet we've got such a large cabinet living a lifestyle of luxury, and it's just totally unacceptable.
Northwest Police have raised concerns over the escalating incidents of service delivery protests in the province. According to police, the province has registered the highest number of protests nationally. 88 protests were reported in a period of 3 months between October and December of last year. The Provincial Commissioner, Major General Patrick Asaneng, says police are forced to focus on crowd control instead of combating crime.
In a period of 3 months, October to December, this province, members of the media, experienced and policed 88 protests across the province. And these protests are what we refer to as core business diversion. Instead of us dealing with crime and criminality, we take the scarce, limited resources to go and police these protests.
And finally, markets continued their sharp slide in the United States as investors grew increasingly concerned about a possible recession caused by President Donald Trump's tariff policies. Trump himself did not rule out the possibility in an interview over the weekend, comments that further spooked the markets. Showan Bryce-Peace reports.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 890 points at Monday's close, pulling back from more than a 1,000-point drop earlier in the day. The S&P 500 dropped 2.7%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq saw a massive decline of 4%, and according to CNBC, experienced its worst trading session since September 2022. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned late last week of a detox period amid the current administration's drastic policy cuts to government spending, while Trump suggested that the economy would go through a period of transition. Trump's tariffs are also driving anxiety, creating uncertainty for the world's largest economy.
Recapping the top story, the Gauteng Health Department says it's attending to the recommendations made by the Health Ombud about the Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Has your medical aid gone up this year? That does not mean you have to pay more for your car insurance too. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just if you're on your way to Tambo International Airport, Joburg side, there's a lot going on this morning. There's a crash on the R24. That's the Albertina Sisulu Highway heading that way. That crash at Barber Road, the backlog down towards the Edenvale exit. Bus, it looks like a military bus, has just overturned on the R21 North off-ramp to the airport. So if you come from Boksburg and Jet Park, you'll probably find that ramp closed. So there'll be a little bit of sort of diversions that you'll need to do around that one. And of course, if you're on your way in from Pretoria, there's the roadworks opposite Tembisa down towards Bupsfontein Road that are there causing delays as well. Heavy pressure this morning from Crossmere through to Uncle Charlie's. If you're on the N1 through the Deepcliff interchange area, it's worse than normal. Major delay still with us. We had a trip time of about 50 minutes a short time ago to get from Marion Hill Plaza up towards the Cliffdale area. Lots of obstructions, bit of mist, and of course the long-term roadworks. If you don't fancy that, the old road, M13 and up via Boorters Hill and Drummond, that'll be your alternative route around that one. Cape Town this morning, N7 North, pretty heavily backed from the casino going through to Bosmansdam Road, and some queuing pressure on the R300 this morning, slow from Delft up towards the Van Riebeeck Road exit to Kales River and Stickland. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. It is soccer action tonight with Stellenbosch out for revenge. They could be taking down Orlando Pirates tonight. And we also have that cricket story. Cricket South Africa delivering one of its harshest punishments, docking the Warriors points in the One Day Cup. All this and more around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 10 minutes after 7 on this Tuesday. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the second hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Here's what's coming up in this hour. We'll take the conversation we started yesterday forward, and that is the conversation around the land claim by the Nxamalala tribe, the Nxamalala clan, over land that includes the prestigious Hilton College in KwaZulu-Natal. This time around, we're taking it forward, but also putting it in the context, in the broader context. You and I know that there's a large volume of so-called old order restitution claims that have never been dealt with to finality since the cutoff date for their lodgement. That was in 1998, I believe, 31 December. So, I mean, this now becomes part of that workload, doesn't it? So I'll be speaking to the Acting Chief Director for Land Restitution Support in KwaZulu-Natal, Sfiso Ndlovu. That conversation coming up in the next few minutes to just make sense of it all. What does the Land Claims Commission do now that that claim has been sent back for consideration, sent back by the Land Claims Court? Then, of course, we'll have to focus on the budget speech, right? Will it or will it not go ahead tomorrow? Just the uncertainty around it, the uncertainty around where will the additional revenue needed to fund expenditure, where will it come from? We understand it's been subject of much horse trading and negotiation within the Government of National Unity, including within the cabinet. But, with some, 30 hours to go, there's still no indication that there's been an agreement on a set of proposals that the finance minister will be able to get to the podium at 2 p.m. tomorrow and present. So the clock is ticking. We'll have a conversation about that now and give you some analysis within this half hour. And a bit later on then, we'll focus on an interesting case that has come out of our courts. It's called Stevens versus Minister of Police. It basically has to do with the degree of blame, apportionment of damages that happens if you visit a public facility like a police station and then you get injured while you are there. How much responsibility falls on the police station and the Minister of Police by extension? How much of it falls on you and your actions to the extent that they are judged to have been a failure on your part to look after yourself, to avoid getting injured? So that conversation coming up at about 10 to 8. It's an interesting case. We'll bring it under the spotlight at about 10 to 8. Through it all, I welcome your calls. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Day 15. Location undisclosed. Mood brave. Music Eye of the Tiger. Dear Diary, it's been 2 weeks of epic challenges against some of the most memorable and epic Survivor contestants. I have endured some harsh weather conditions, unbelievable drama, and these fire tokens have given me and the other contestants a second chance to stay in the game. Food. I feast on the defeat of my enemies. Vumi over there is busy planning and scheming, thinking that he can get me off the island. Never mind though. I will win this and take home $2 million. We're gonna be rich, Papa.
Rich Goopy Wanaponani, are you doing that thing again? Come and get your dinner, Mr. Fake Diary Sessions. We're now on Survivor. Oh, the world will fall.
Catch Survivor Season 40, Winners at War. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Starts 27 February on S3. Open up.
Turn your vision into reality with Vodacom Business. Get the Samsung Galaxy S25 on a Red Business 1.7 gig contract for 1,129 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal. Add 69 Rand extra per month over 24 months and get the Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 eSIM. Available in-store and online. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom Business.
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
7:15 on this Tuesday. The KwaZulu-Natal Regional Land Claims Commissioner's Office will now have to adjudicate anew the Ngqamalala tribe's claim over land that includes the site where the elite Hilton College stands. This after the Land Claims Court found that the Regional Land Claims Commission's original dismissal of the 2008 claim was irrational. The court then ordered that the matter be remitted back to the Regional Land Claims Commission for a fresh decision. In doing that, the claim has been resuscitated and rejoins the nearly 6,000 so-called old order restitution claims lodged by the deadline of 31 December 1998 that are yet to be settled. I'm joined now by the Acting Chief Director for Land Restitution Support in KwaZulu-Natal, Sifiso Ndlovu. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. What do you understand to be the immediate implications of the court judgment in the Ngqamalala clan matter?
Good morning, Makuichwa and the listeners. Thank you very much for an opportunity. But before I respond to that particular question, I just want to emphasize that the commission of the Commission on the Restitution of Land Right is to restore land to the community that were wrongly fully dispossessed due to racial policy and injustice of the past. As you correctly pointed from the beginning, that this case is part of a certain broader processing of the healing and the redress. So from the side of the commission, after we have received the judgment, it is important to mention that the commission is still studying the judgment. However, we have, on the mere perusal of the judgment, we have noted few issues, but one of the issue is that the decision that have been made by the land court recently is set aside the decision that was taken on the 17th of June 2005, whereby it dismissed the Ngqamalala land claim on the basis that they were claiming a historical jurisdictional boundary. So the net effect of the judgment of the court is that it have given the life again to the Ngqamalala land claims, and then it allows the further processing of the claim through the proper mechanism within the Restitution of Land Rights Act. But the other aspect as well that we have noted in the judgment, by remitting back the claim to the commission, it technically gives the commission now another opportunity to make determination and the decision regarding the further processing of the claim, following obviously business process of the claim. However, we wish to mention that initially, as you are aware, that there was an issue of the review. Also, there was another issue of the referral that we have got a separate legal proceedings that were before the court, which deal with the same matter. I think then it then allow also the court to deal with an issue of the validity of the claim based on the objections that were raised by the respective landowners.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing you say, I'm trying to glean if we're saying that it's remitted back to the Regional Land Claims Commission. So where does the process go? Does it go back to the original adjudication process, adjudicate anew, taking into consideration the objections that you mentioned, or do we restart the process at the point at which you were talking about the possibility of financial compensation for the claimants?
When then the matter is thank you very much, Makuichwa. When then the matter is remitted back to the commission, there are steps that need to be followed. The first step is through the business process. What does the business process require for the commission? One, it requires that there must be a historical valuation on the land right lost and the feasibility for the restoration in order to determine a question of just and equitable compensation that is supposed to be payable to each and every verified household. So that's the first thing that the commission need to do once the matter is remitted. And then secondly, what the commission need to do also is to try and appoint a geometric map analyst to try and analyze the aerial photographs and the other information in order to ensure that the number of households that were dispossessed of the right in land within the claim land are measurable, so that you don't have got people that could benefit from the claim, which ordinarily they were not supposed to benefit, they were not even dispossessed of the right in land in respect of that particular claim. So is what is going to happen.
Sure.
And then the other aspect as well that is going to happen, which will be a parallel process, while also the matter is still pending separately before the land court. This information that the commission need to process also help the court to arrive at an appropriate decision.
All right. So the other aspect of the land that includes the Hilton College is that it had also been subject to a labor tenant laws-based claim. And in 2019, there was that constitutional court decision that said there should be the appointment of a special master to oversee the processing of such claims. Since the 2019 ruling, how far has the process gone with the labor tenants claim aspect as far as the land that includes Hilton College goes?
No, thank you very much, sir. I think what is important also on the issue of the labor tenant, I must declare from the beginning to say, the issue of the labor tenant does not fall within the purview of the Commission on Restitution of Land Right. However, we are aware that the special master was appointed, but we are not privy with the process and progress made so far. But I think that issue will be better be dealt with once we have discussed the special master. But what we noted, if there is there are overlapping or competing rights between labor tenant and restitution claim in respect of Hilton College, such issue will have been dealt with in the referral matter, which I said is a separate application that is still pending before the court.
Okay,
and then the court will be a better position to deal with it.
Lastly, then, I alluded to some 6,000, close to 6,000 old order claims, and this is at a national level, of course. But just give me a snapshot of what that looks like in KwaZulu-Natal, because now you add back this Mpumalanga claim back to those 6,000. Where does it stand, and how many were you able to settle in the past financial year, and to what extent have you been affected by the budget cuts that everyone is talking about?
Thank you very much, sir. I think Mpumalanga form part now of 1,104 outstanding claim in KwaZulu-Natal.
Sorry, say that number again. 1,000?
1,104 outstanding claim in KwaZulu-Natal, which KwaZulu-Natal contribute the biggest number of that 6,000 that we are talking about. I think the same claim will then follow the business process and the milestones that are envisaged within the business process of the Commission. But what I can also mention is that, as we already pointed on at the beginning, that the Mpumalanga claim has been resuscitated. But what the court have done in that matter, it did not review and set aside the Gazette notice that was issued, an investigation. Then what then it does, it then allows the Commission and the courts to properly deal with the matter in a manner it deems fit, because you don't start from the beginning per se. It's just that you beef up your report to ensure that it fast track the issue of the settlement of the claim.
All right.
But the other issue as well, which we think is important, is to mention that if you look at the progress of the settlement of these claims for the past 2 financial years, 2023 and 2024 financial year, in terms of the target that we set as a commission, we were sitting at 349. That was a target, but the achievement was 361. In terms of the settlement, it means there was a substantial achievement, 361. But in terms of the finalization, because in terms of the technical indicator, the finalization and settlement are different.
All right, I've got to leave it there. I'm completely out of time. Thank you for your time this morning. That is the Acting Chief Director for Land Restitution Support in KwaZulu-Natal, Sfiso Ndlovu.
Specsavers now looks after your hearing as well as your vision with Specsavers Audiology. With 60 stores and counting, we are South Africa's largest audiology group. For a limited time only, buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. Find your nearest store at specsavers.co.za. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
So on the eve of Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's expected second take at delivering the national budget, there's still no indication as to whether or not his proposals have received the necessary cabinet support. Much of the uncertainty, you'll remember, centers around his initial plan to raise value-added tax, that's VAT. Government of National Unity Partners are understood to have been working furiously over the past few days to try and reach an agreement on where to raise the required revenue to fund Godongwana's budget proposals. Let's speak now to Professor Andre Roux, who is an economist at Stellenbosch Business School. Good morning to you, Prof. Thank you for your time.
Morning.
So the conversation continues, and I think by the end of last week into the weekend, there was talk about a smaller VAT increase, but it continues to be hugely unpopular. What options does the finance minister have going into tomorrow?
Yes, well, mathematically, quite a few options. I mean, obviously, one is to raise more tax by raising one of the tax rates, one or more of the tax rates. A second possibility is to cut back on government spending. A third possibility is to borrow more money. So mathematically, it can be done. The big question is which one of those will wreak the least damage on the economy. Each one of those will be detrimental, will be painful to the economy. It becomes a question of which one is economically, socioeconomically, and politically the most, I would almost say, appetizing. And therein lies the problem. One would like to see very real attempts to try to but to reduce government spending, even though in the way of eliminating wasteful spending and unauthorized spending. At the same time, we see that the Commissioner of SARS has said repeatedly, give me enough money and I can collect an additional X 100 billion rand of uncollected taxes. So there we can also see a source. So I think we're going to see some combination of all of these tomorrow. But my real concern is, as much as the limelight is now falling on how to plug that 60 billion rand gap, we're losing sight of the much more important, bigger picture, that is how to get the economy growing. So I think, unfortunately, this has taken the focus away from the really important issues, how to get the economy growing, because ultimately that is one of the best ways of generating more tax revenue and balancing the books without hurting people.
So in the last few days, I've seen also the choice being presented starkly that says one of the big expenditure items is the social relief of distress grant, the 370 rand a month grant, which was meant to be temporary interim relief, now almost seeming like a permanent grant. So the choice has been presented starkly to say either I cut on this SRD grant or I have to increase the taxes. Is it that stark?
Absolutely. Well, you see, that's the problem. In all these cases are so-called trade-offs. So by cutting that grant or getting rid of it, I think that would do more harm than good for millions and millions of financially distressed people. We can say the same about the civil servant wage bill. I mean, we know that the current minister and his predecessors on various occasions said that our civil service wage bill is too high and needs to be at least frozen and preferably reduced. But politically, that is a very brave thing to do and brave thing to say. In fact, as we know, recently a 5.5% increase was approved for civil servants. He can't renege on that. And so the story goes on. You can look at each item of spending and justify why it should or should not be reduced. It gets difficult, which is why I said a bit earlier, ideally one should rather perhaps not try to slash individual budgets, but rather say, let us eliminate wasteful, unauthorized spending, and then on the revenue side, let us be more efficient in collecting more tax.
Why is an increase in the corporate tax not an option? I've heard the finance minister saying that's simply a no-go. The simplistic, untrained mind will say, why not?
Well, you see, it's always an option. Obviously, any of these things are options. But as I said earlier, you've got to weigh it up against the cost. And the cost could very well be that our already wishy-washy investment effort in South Africa will be further compromised. It would deter investors even more than ever before in terms of wanting to invest in the country and build factories and open up their shops, as it were. So for that reason, one would be reluctant, one would be hesitant in raising the corporate tax rate because it would just add to a whole range of potential obstacles perceived by investors regarding investing in the country. The same goes for the individual tax rate. Obviously, that's a very convenient way of raising more revenue, but we could again counter-argue and say, but as it is, a handful of individual taxpayers are responsible for the bulk of tax revenue. You reach a point where if you raise these kind of rates above a certain level, it becomes kind of self-defeating. You end up with people reducing their economic activity to try to avoid paying tax, and the economy suffers as a consequence.
Yeah, it's a tough choice. Do they call it what? A Sophie's choice. Thank you for that.
It is.
That's Professor Andre Roux. He's an economist at Stellenbosch Business School. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, health activist Dr. Khosili Tlhabis says there should be no NHI without a well-functioning public health system. This after the Health Ombudsman found that the management of Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg was poor. The Gauteng Health Department says it's attending to the recommendations made by the Health Ombudsman about the Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg, and delegations from Ukraine and the US are set to meet in Saudi Arabia today. The gathering aims to find a solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Crash delays on your way to OR Tambo International Airport. Choose your routes carefully this morning. There's a crash on the main R24. This is the Albertina Sisulu Highway before Barbara Road. So that's the run out to the airport from Galilee's backlog to Edenvale exit. And there's a big bus. It looks like a military bus that's overturned on the R21 North at the airport exit. Now that's as you come up from Jet Park in the Boksburg side. So quite a bit of traffic building up into that closure of the ramp. The R21 North is open, but it's the closure of the ramp which is going to just cause a bit of confusion and cause you to hit some alternative routes. Coming through from Benoni this morning into Boksburg, the N12 heavy Snake Road down to Atlas Road, really badly backed up. A lot of pressure still on the N1 coming north from Crossmere as you pass Eldorado Park in Devlin. There's a really big queue between the N12 Potch Highway and the N12 slip down to Uncle Charlie. Still major delays going out of Durban to Pietermaritzburg. They've had it all happening there this morning. An earlier closure, another crash, a couple of breakdowns and roadworks. It's still a massive queue before you get to Shongweni, so just after Marion Hill Plaza all the way to Cliffdale. Our advice has been take the old road. If you can't do that, make sure you're prepared for the long haul or travel later. Broken down vehicle N2 south at Spaghetti Junction, the resultant queue already back towards Umgeda Road. And Cape Town reasonably busy today, particularly if you're on the N7. You're going to sit through Langa, through Epping, through Goodwood, and then all the way to Bosmansdam Road. There's not many gaps in that N7 Jakes Kerville run north. Had a crash on the N1 inbound at the N7. Highway's been cleared, but it's left a big backlog of traffic between Plattekloof Hill and the city centre area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning to you once again. Stellenbosch were... To say they were not pleased is an understatement about how they exited. But of course, other people were talking Stellenbosch, wine region, sour grapes.
Sour grapes. And also, added to that sour grapes that Steve Barker's been having, somebody should check on his blood pressure because he's been fuming the whole week, and I don't know if this is going to be brought into this match. It feels like it. Stellenbosch still seething after their controversial Nedbank Cup exit at the hands of Kaizer Chiefs. They don't have time to dwell. They're taking on Orlando Pirates tonight. The Soweto Giants are chasing a historic quadruple. Stellies coach Steve Barker making it clear his team has had enough of refereeing decisions going against them, and they're taking that frustration straight into tonight's league clash. Pirates, on the other hand, they are in hot form, riding back-to-back wins, keeping their sights firmly on the league title with tensions high, and Stellies looking for payback. That kick-off at Athlone Stadium tonight, 7:30 p.m. Expect fireworks. Meanwhile, the Kaizer Chiefs coach Nasruddin Nabi is looking to carry the momentum from their 3-1 win against Stellenbosch in the Nedbank Cup to their league games. Chiefs have not won 3 matches in a row this season, and tomorrow's game against Cape Town City presents them with that opportunity. Chiefs are placed 8th on the log with 28 points from 20 matches, separated just 3 points with third-place Stellies side, who also have a game in hand. The Angolan international defender Inacio Miguel also backs Coach Nabi's call for consistency.
Yeah, the important more than the third game in a row, it's the consistency, That's what we are looking for during all the season. I think the key of big teams and regular teams is the consistency. I know we are during a process, we are building something. More important than to get the third victory in a row, it's being consistent, and that's what we are looking to.
Now, the Liverpool boss, Arne Slot, described Paris Saint-Germain's visit as the second of 3 finals in a week, but has warned much more is needed from the Premier League leaders to progress to the Champions League quarterfinals. The Reds escape the Parc des Princes with a 1-0 lead last week. Never before have Liverpool won the first leg of a European tie away and let the lead slip at Anfield. However, Slot is taking nothing for granted.
The intensity they play that with, combined with the quality they have, because let's be honest, we are talking here about probably the richest club, or maybe there's one richer club a bit further ahead, but so they have so much quality and a great manager, because he lets the team play in a way that it's not easy to play against this team, and he brings the best out of every player, and he brings incredible work rate in the team.
And cricket, South Africa have delivered one of its harshest punishments ever, docking the Warriors crucial points in the One Day Cup and fining them a record-breaking 500,000 rand for failing to meet transformation requirements. The Eastern Cape team fielded 6 players of colour, but only 2 black African players, 1 short of the required 3. As a result, they're out of the playoff race with their points handed to the Dolphins. Now, the Warriors says they're not backing down. They'll be challenging the decision, saying it's unfair given that other teams have slipped up before without similar consequences. And finally, tennis action. The third seed Coco Gauff reaching the Indian Wells round of 16, defeating Maria Sakkari 7-6, 6-2. The world number 1 Arina Sabalenka easing past Lucia Bronzetti 6-1, 6-2. And Ben Shelton getting the crowd on its feet, defeating Karen Khachanov 10th consecutive match against Denis Shapovalov 6-2, 6-4. And that's for a place in the 4th round. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey, Ndauling, good morning to you once again. Who is Impact? And tell me about them and their profits declining.
So Impact is the country's largest paper and plastics packaging group. So they package and plastic everything from, let's say, boxes from farms that have fruits. They also provide shopping or rather supermarkets with plastics and paper packaging for groceries. So that's essentially what they do. And challenging economic conditions as well as high operating costs have weighed on the company. For the year ended December, operating profit fell 23%, but it managed to eke out some gains in its top line, with the revenue up 4%. The company's CEO, Bruce Strong, attributed the profit decline to high fixed costs, restructuring efforts, and a tough first half. But he noted that the company's strategy focused on growth sectors such as fruit exports and returnable transit packaging will boost it moving forward. So Strong expressed optimism about the government's efforts to address the country's electricity and logistic challenges, which have weighed on its operations. The company is also benefiting from the growth in convenience shopping, which has driven demand for paper shopping bags. Strong noted that Impact is well positioned to capitalize on any economic recovery in the country despite the current subdued domestic economy. In terms of its outlook, Impact expects the fruit export sector to grow by more than 3% annually, driven by increasing demand for avocado and blueberries. The company is also investing in new machinery and facilities to enhance its operational efficiency.
And then in other company news, tell me about AVI and the acquisitions that they are eyeing for the year 2025.
I think AVI is such an interesting business. Do you know what they do?
I've got an idea. I remember, I think I asked you some time ago. They include I&J, right?
Yes.
Yes, I remember that part.
So a really interesting business in a sense that it owns brands that are so different, from I&J to Baker's Biscuits to even Spitz that houses Cavella. So
really?
I think it's such it's such an
so
interesting.
Diversified.
Right, very, very diversified. So when people have less discretionary spending and not necessarily buying clothes and shoes, they have the more defensive products like I&J and I guess the biscuits that we love in December as well. So the consumer goods company is on the lookout for new acquisitions. AVI is looking for businesses with strong brand portfolios that can withstand South Africa's volatile economy. The company's CEO, Simon Crutchley, noted that AVI competes with multinationals. He further emphasized that paying the right price for new assets is crucial, especially in the local market. So they will be approaching this acquisition spree per se with caution. Now, this announcement is accompanied by the group's interim numbers, where revenue increased 1% while earnings jumped 9%. The group increased its interim dividend in the meantime by 8.9%. In terms of individual results of its divisions, food and beverages, which make up the biggest chunk of its portfolio, performed strongly, while its fashion retail portfolio was challenged by supplier and global supply chain issues. Meanwhile, the fishing business, I&J, which is highly cyclical, was hit by low abalone demand as well as lower selling prices. So really a mixed bag of results on that front.
Yeah, no, if you are that diversified, there are many, many markets where you are interested. Lastly, Ndawling, just another recap of market activity here at home and elsewhere in the world.
Kicking things off in Asia, stocks in the red, mirroring the downturn on Wall Street overnight. Investors are growing anxious about the prospect of a U.S. recession and the global economic fallout from President Donald Trump's tariffs and trade policies. Surprisingly, though, U.S. futures are in the green, and this despite that risk-off sentiment. However, that risk still remains as traders await U.S. consumer inflation data out later this week. Then coming back home, markets downbeat with stocks closing in negative territory. The all-share down over 1% in yesterday's trading session. Not much action playing out in the currency scene, though, with the rand stable ahead of that national budget. It's sitting at 18.31 to the dollar this hour.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndawling Lechela. She'll be back with one more update where she'll give you a sense of what the trading day is likely to look like on this Tuesday. And that update will be coming up just after 8:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
For that, let's say good morning to Lerato Tsebe, an independent African researcher standing in for Sipho Mantula this morning. Good morning to you, Lerato. So we start in the DRC. Tell me about the officials from the party of the former president, Joseph Kabila, appearing before a military prosecutor.
Morning to us and morning to your listeners. Yes, things are getting a bit tense in the DRC. It never rains, but it pours, I think, for President Tshisekedi. A military prosecutor sent letters of invitation to 10 members of former President Joseph Kabila's political party, the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy. The exact reasons why the invitation letters were sent to appear before the prosecutors really wasn't quite clear, but there were no charges that were formally formally laid against them. Now, you must remember that these letters are being dispensed after former President Kabila has now reached out to opposition politicians and civil society members in the country to discuss the country's political future, and also sort of a criticism of President Tshisekedi's response into his mismanaging the M23 campaign in the eastern DRC. This has obviously upset quite a lot of people in government, these meetings, as it's sort of undermining, obviously, the political authority and legitimacy of President Tshisekedi. But as I said, nobody's been charged of anything as of yet, but there is sort of some provocation that has been elicited as a consequence of that meeting that President Kabila held.
Yeah. So tell me about South Sudan and the concerns of the UN Human Rights Commission about the severity of the political regression in that particular country compared to years of political progress.
Yeah, Tulas, I mean, the 2018 peace agreement that was signed between President Salva Kiir and Vice President Riek Machar to end a years-long civil war is really falling apart in South Sudan. You must remember this is now coming a few days after the crashing of a United Nations mission in South Sudan helicopter that killed a few generals and all passengers on board. The UN Human Rights Commission in South Sudan is warning of a really alarming political regression that is going to undo years of progress that they feel they've worked towards peace. Yesterday as well, the United States State Department actually did issue an evacuation order for all non-essential staff personnel in South Sudan. So the situation is becoming a bit tenuous, I'd say.
And then lastly, Lerato, tell me about the situation in Kenya around the president, William Ruto, and donations to churches. What's that about?
Tula, so this is a bit of a lighter story. President William Ruto gave a donation to the amount of $155,000 to a church in Nairobi called Jesus Winner Ministry. This has caused massive outcry amongst the public as Kenyans are grappling with the high cost of living, and there are very serious pressing economic issues that people feel are really confronting and challenging the country. There's been some clashes with police and roadblocks and arrests as the church service proceeded, but President Ruto is digging his heels in and saying that he will continue to support giving money to churches in spite of public outcry that this has rightfully caused, and that he says he will support any religious institution despite the ongoing national concerns over government spending.
He was donating from his own personal money, was he?
Yes, he is. But I mean, his personal money is his salary on behalf of tax-paying Kenyans. Yeah.
I can see how that would cause a controversy. I'll look out for that story. Thank you for flagging it. That's Lerato Tsebe, an independent African researcher standing in for Sipho Mantula this morning.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Let me take one or two of your calls. Let me start with Clive in Cape Town. Good morning to you, Clive. You want to talk to me about City of Cape Town and the approval of housing in unlivable areas. What does that mean?
Yes, Tulas. We've been staying here from 2012. We bought these properties here in the Kells River area, whereby there was a steel factory which was closed. The City of Cape Town approved the mushrooming of these houses next to the steel plant. There's no buffer zone. Every night is noise, is vibration, is smoke, is metal dust. It is just unbearable. And
sorry, Clive, let me ask you to say that slowly for us. So is this an area in Kells River, and you are saying that it is unlivable?
Yes.
Yeah, explain to us, how did you end up living there?
We bought a property there in 2012.
Okay.
Yes. So around 2017, the factory just opened up, and then
I see.
If you can just send somebody into the Kells River area and just interview, those people are dying in silence, but the City of Cape Town keeps on ignoring this request of how did you approve these houses next to the steel factory, which was closed, and then you open it, and then it's also IDC invested in the, it's chaos. But there's something called special planning, which was ignored by the City of Cape Town.
I see. So basically, when you bought, there was no factory. It had closed. But once you bought and you were living in the area, that factory was allowed to reopen, and you are saying that it's leading to unbearable conditions. So it's an issue of zonal planning and spatial planning, is it?
Yes.
What would you like to hear from the city of Cape Town?
I would like the city of Cape Town to take their blame and to either buy these houses which are affected by this no buffer zone between the factory and them, or compensate each and every person who is affected by this thing.
All right, got you, Clive. What's the name of the factory?
Kamal Cisco.
What is it?
Kamal Cisco.
All right, thank you for that. That's Clive in Cape Town. Yeah.
You mind, or if you can call me back, then I give you the numbers of the people who've got more information about it.
All right, that's all good. Please hold on. Let's take your numbers and see if it's possible to take that conversation forward. That is Clive in Cape Town there. Let me take a call from Sipho in Kokstad. Good morning to you, Sipho. You want to talk to me about budget suggestions this morning?
Certainly good. How are you two?
Very well. How are you?
No, cool. What is my suggestion was that can we re-look at the tender projects? Because I believe government, that is where they have got the waste of money, you know. Because if you look at the quality of these tenderpreneurs who are busy doing the services for us, they are doing only shoddy jobs. You know, it's unbearable. I don't know how can I explain it. Look at the roads. You'll see today they are here to patch the potholes. Two weeks later, if it's raining, those potholes are there again. And how much are being spent by the government paying for those friends of them? And secondly, if you can think of these people, the SCM department, they can't even make a document for those tenders. They have to hire the consultants. Why can't you just create a permanent employment jobs? We have got our own engineers. We have got youth who are qualified. They need experience. Where are they going to get the experience? If we give all the jobs that's supposed to be owned by a government and give it to the private companies who are not even interested in making the quality job, they are only interested in making money.
Yeah.
If we can be able to try and stop the tenders, we'll save billions. And that billions can be able to employ doctors, police, soldiers, teachers, and also create employment for the youth of South Africa.
Sipho?
Instead of making one or two people to become billionaires and millionaires.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Yeah. Sipho, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I have nothing to add to that, but it is a theme, a constant theme that I've heard that says we wouldn't be here if we didn't have the levels of irregular, wasteful and fruitless expenditure that we have. And I think Sipho was breaking that down quite nicely for us. Thank you for that. We'll take more of your calls a bit later on the show.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Two fairly heavy hold-ups on the highways towards OR Tambo International this morning. There's been this overturned bus. It's quite a serious collision scene. R21 North at the off-ramp to the R24 West and into the airport. So if you're coming from Boksburg and up from Jet Park Road, the R21 approaching the airport's down to a single lane. The ramp is closed and the highway down to a single lane. So the very heavy delays there. If you're heading for flights off the M12, make sure you've got plenty of time to think about that and get through. Otherwise, off-ramp at Griffiths and go in the back way. The other crash is on the R24 Albertina Sisulu Highway heading towards the airport at Barber Road, and that's still a queue back as far as Edenvale. N12 through Benoni towards Boksburg, really big delay. Snake Road through to Atlas Road this morning. Lights are down Main and Sloane, so it's another day of delays coming through from Lone Hill on your way down towards Bryanston. Now the run out of Durban towards Pietermaritzburg, still a crash scene waiting to be cleared up just after Shongweni up towards Key Ridge. After that, all the obstructions have cleared, but it's very heavy mist. So and a truck could break down any moment as well because of the volume of traffic that is queuing. They just sort of queue and they might overheat or whatever and then break down. So the upshot from Shongweni, Key Ridge up to Cliffdale, it's a massive delay and a big backlog of traffic. Still travel later or take the alternative 103 Old Main Road via Hillcrest if you know what you're doing there. Crash scene on the Umgena Road, just coming in towards the Moses Mabhida Stadium, that side of Durban. Watch some delays there. there. And Cape Town fairly heavy on the M1. Belleville through to the city centre. Marine Drive still jam-packed this morning, coming from Bayside Mall through to Racecourse Road. And a lot of traffic on the N7. You're going to pick up delays around the Epping Fire Station, around Viking Way, and you won't get out of it until you got past the exit to Bosmansdam Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
6 minutes to 8 here on the Morning Brief. A recent case in a personal injury claim has ignited debate about how much responsibility a person must take for injuries they suffer while visiting a public facility like a police station. In the case known as Stevens versus Minister of Police, an 80-year-old man sued the police after falling from an unsecured landing at a police station, alleging that the officers failed to ensure the safety of the premises. The plaintiff had claimed that a police officer directed him to wash his hands outside the police station, leading him to fall from the unsecured area. Although the court established that the defendant, that is the police, had a duty to maintain safe premises, it also found the plaintiff partially liable for his own injuries. Let's unpack it all. A lot of legal jargon, but let's make sense of it all. I'm joined by Retabile Shabalala, who is a senior associate at Weber Wenzel. Good morning to you, Retabile. Thank you for your time. Why is this judgment important? How does it improve or develop the law on the apportionment of damages as we know it?
Thank you, Thulasizwe. Good morning to you and to all the listeners. This judgment is particularly quite important when it comes to essentially establishing, well, not necessarily establishing, but just reaffirming some of the principles we know on negligence as well as contributory negligence. Obviously, none of these principles are a new phenomenon, but often than not, where a defendant is obviously defending a liability claim, there will be allegations of negligence against the defendant, and often in those cases, there would also be allegations of negligence on the part of the claimant. The claimant also has a duty, Thulasizwe, to ensure that they safeguard against their own negligence. So when you look at the negligence of the claimant in this particular instance, for example, they are also required to exercise reasonable care for their own safety. This means that you need to be aware of your surroundings and avoid obvious hazards. What makes this case particularly important is the fact that the court did actually find on assessment of the facts before it that the claimant was contributory negligent, and the court found it to be negligent for 20% of the injuries that he suffered.
So as far as the principles that come out from this case, they would apply, I imagine, Retabile, with equal force to other contexts, right? So if you're visiting a police station, visiting a public hospital, or even the local grocery shop, would the principles apply that you have a responsibility as well? Well, the establishment has a responsibility to keep you safe, but you also have a responsibility to look out for yourself.
Indeed, indeed. We see a lot of these types of claims, Thulasizwe, in what we call slip and trip claims. You'll be surprised at how often, members of the public will fall and slip and injure themselves outside, for example, the refrigerator section of a shop because of condensation, and maybe there's a spillage on the ground. But where the claimant themselves aren't vigilant of their surroundings and, for example, didn't see that there's a caution and what do you call it, a caution signage on the floor, and ultimately slip on the spillage, there will be an element of negligence that's found against them. So it happens often as well in airports, for example. You're running to catch your flight. You don't see that there's either an obstruction on the way, and as a result of you not being vigilant of the surroundings, you may have found to have contributed to your own negligence. So yes, it applies across the board to premises that are open to members of the public. There is an element of duty that is placed on members of the public to safeguard against harm occurring to themselves.
Someone listening to this conversation may say, no, hang on, I don't like this one bit, in that in a way, someone might interpret it as taking some of the responsibility away from the people that are meant to ensure that their premises are safe. If I visit a supermarket, the supermarket has a responsibility to mark if the floors are wet and might cause me to slip and fall. Are we saying that we're shifting that responsibility away from them to the customer The person visiting the premises?
Yeah, it's definitely not a shift, because you see in this particular case, the court didn't say, okay, because the claimant failed to look where he was going, failed to be vigilant, failed to be observant of the surroundings, he's therefore completely liable for the damages that he suffered. No, the court in fact apportioned the liability between the parties. So the court will always look at the surrounding facts of the matter. In this case, yes, the responsibility does fall on the property owner, which was the Minister of Police in this particular instance. And the court said as a result of their negligence and ultimately the liability, they were 80% liable for damages. But we can't negate the responsibility and duty that also falls on members of the public to equally take, sort of reasonable steps to safeguard for their own safety in public. And on that premises, the court then said, we'll hold you 20% liable for your own negligence. So it works both ways.
Lastly, Retabile, just tell me about those signs that we see when we enter various premises that say you enter these premises at own risk. Signs like those, do they save the owners and the managers of those facilities from liability should an incident happen?
Yes, I'm very glad you asked this question. It's one of my favorite topics to speak about. So what you're referring to are disclaimer notices to the Thulasizwe, and as you say, it essentially just exempts the property owners from any liability for loss or injuries that occurs as a result of you using the facilities. Now, in order for disclaimer notices to be enforceable, they must comply with two very specific requirements. The first one is that the disclaimer notice must be prominently displayed at a place where one would expect to see a disclaimer notice. So, for example, the entrance of the shopping center, as you mentioned, or maybe if you're going to an amusement park, the ticket booth where you're purchasing the tickets. The second requirement is that the wording of the disclaimer notice must be clear and unambiguous. So it mustn't be like in fanciful language. It must just simply state what the property owner's intentions are, which is to be exempted from certain liability. In fact, on that point, Thulasizwe, I will be, during the course of this week, writing an article specifically dealing with disclaimer notices on a recent judgment that the High Court has issued, where the disclaimer notice was upheld, and the property owner was found not to be liable because of the existence of the disclaimer notice. So I'll obviously share that on my LinkedIn profile, and you can also find it on the Weber Wenzel website.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing your insights with us this morning. That's Retabile Shabalala, who is a senior associate at Weber Wenzel. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news.
In our top stories, calls for a well-functioning public health system and talks for a solution to Russia-Ukraine conflict. Good morning. Health activist Dr. Kgosi Letlhapesi says there should be no NHI without a well-functioning public health system. This after the health ombud found the management of Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg was poor. The ombud noted shortages in linen and other necessities in the hospital. The Ombud released the findings of its probe into claims of neglect at the hospital. Broadcaster Thomas Holmes, known as Tom London, posted videos of himself complaining about the bad treatment by healthcare workers and the state of the hospital. Dr. Letlhapesi says using existing resources properly is the answer to efficient healthcare system.
You can't have actors all over the place. You need to introduce line budgeting, where from the budget of the hospital, we know how much goes to security, how much goes to maintenance, how much goes to human resources, how much goes to equipment, how much goes to drugs. If we can't do that, the problems will just become compounded. We had a public healthcare system that was far better than the private system in the past, because systems were in place. You just needed people on site to implement in accordance with the system, and you were able to judge their performance based on the template that everyone has been given.
Meanwhile, the Gauteng Health Department says it's attending to the recommendations made by the Health Ombud. The Office of Health Standards Compliance and the Health Ombud found that the hospital had challenges related to human resources, lack of governance, staff shortages and cleanliness. Gauteng Health Department spokesperson Mutalatale Mudiba says work is being done by the department to attend to issues raised by the report.
It must be pointed out that we've already initiated a province-wide interventions that are aimed at addressing the identified issues. Interventions include the reviewing of the organizational structure, which is currently awaiting approval processes, while the infrastructure function within the department has been strengthened with the appointment of a Deputy Director General. And the process of the filling of the CEO post at Helen Joseph is prioritized for the new financial year.
Action SA MP Alan Beasley says they are not going to support any VAT increase by the Finance Minister Ino Godongwana when he tables the 2025 budget tomorrow. Beasley has described any proposals for tax increase as ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous to expect South Africans to pay for all the corruption, incompetence and wastage that's currently going on in government departments and government entities on scope, on term and on the Finance Committee and on the Auditor General. I've just seen firsthand how much corruption, wastage and incompetence there is in the system. I mean, it's morally incomprehensible that we've got a cabinet of 75 members who live a life of opulence. You know, it's just there's 50% of South African households are going to go to bed hungry tonight. Yet we've got such a large cabinet living a lifestyle of luxury, and it's just totally unacceptable.
Delegations from Ukraine and the US are set to meet in Saudi Arabia today. The gathering aims to find a solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, Lubov Abravitova, elaborates.
I think that the negotiations and discussions will definitely provide the world with another yet confirmation that Ukrainians want peace more than anyone else, and that we always been determined to the peace solution and solution through the diplomacy, and that's why Ukrainian delegation is discussing this on different platforms.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to visit South Africa next month. Abravitova says this will be the first high-profile visit since the two countries established diplomatic ties.
We've been consistent in discussions with South Africa and pointing out and encouraging South Africa to participate in different discussions and peace processes in the peace formula of Zelensky. We do believe South Africa has the role to play, and we very appreciate the mission that came led by President Ramaphosa to Ukraine.
Recapping the top story, health activist Dr. Khosile Tlhape says there should be no NHI without a well-functioning public health system. This after the Health Ombud found the management of Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg was poor. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just trying to avoid the R21 going north from the Boksburg side up into the airport this morning. It's a very serious bus crash. Most of the highways restricted. The ramp off the R21 into the airport there, where you can split to the R24 or turn into the airport, is also closed. It's a big queue. You may well find that the authorities step in and close the road at Griffiths Road and put in sort of enforced diversion there. But if you're on the highway, coming in from Benoni, Boksburg side, or heading out from Jet Park, Craft Road sort of thing, and you think that's where you're going to go, N12, don't do that. Off-ramp at Jet Park or off-ramp at Craft Road, and try and work your way onto some alternative routes. Otherwise, the back road, Atlas Road, if you know what you're doing, that way as well. That's the R21. There's also a crash on the R24 towards the airport at Barber Road, causing delays as well. The queue time between Shongweni and Cliffdale, on your way to Durban to Pietermaritzburg, closer now to about 30 minutes. There's some pretty heavy mist and foggy conditions there, plus a crash between Shongweni and Key Ridge. So it remains pretty heavily backed up out towards PMB. Cape Town this morning, N7 stays very busy. Queues from Epping's Viking Way, from the Epping Fire Station all the way through to Bosmanstown Road. And the N1 quite slow this morning, going to sit from Plattercliff Hill through to the city centre. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines Soccer News. The Maruma Gallants coach, Abdusalam Ouadou, admits that he's had little or no time on the training ground with the players since taking over. And we also bring you Maruma Gallants. They'll be also looking to take on their very own nemesis, and that's Sekhukhune United, who've appointed Eric Tinkler as their new coach, and that's tomorrow. Details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 9 minutes after 8 on this Tuesday. Good morning and welcome to the third hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. We've started several conversations in the last 2 hours. Let me quickly reflect on one or two of them. The last conversation in the last hour, I found that to be quite interesting. There was with Ritabile Shabalala from Weber Wenzel. It had to do with a recent case called Stevens versus Minister of Police, where an 80-year-old man sued the police after he had fallen from an unsecured area just at a police station. He alleged that the police officers failed to ensure the safety of the premises. So police officers, by extension, the Minister of Police, failed to ensure that that area is safe and secure. What came out from that conversation is, again, the emphasis of this principle that says, yes, the owners of premises, including your local grocery store, your local petrol station, etc., have a responsibility to keep the premises safe, but there's an expectation that you are also looking out where you are walking, such that you, as much as possible, avoid injury to yourself. It's an age-old principle in law. But I mean, how do you feel about? Do you understand the clear demarcation of where the responsibility of the owner of the premises ends and your responsibility starts? For instance, I mean, if you're walking in a supermarket, are you expected? You may have the expectation that the ceiling won't fall on you, but can it really be said that you have a responsibility that you should ensure that you minimize your own injuries in the event that the ceiling falls on you while you are walking in there? I don't know, just from that conversation, if you heard it, just pick up on it. I'd love to hear from you, your own perspectives about that responsibility. But in terms of national matters to do with the budget, right, the clock is ticking. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., one expects that Enoch Godongwana takes to the podium and unveils what agreements have been reached within the mechanisms of the Government of National Unity. What are the proposals? Where will the money come from? Show me the money, and then tell us where the money will go in terms of spending. But at this point, as you and I speak, we are none the wiser. We are none the wiser as to whether or not the coalition government partners have reached an agreement around that initial proposal that he had tabled, that he wanted to table rather, a few weeks ago for an increase on value-added tax. It was going to be a 2 percentage point increase. There's been severe pushback from various quarters within society. So I wonder if we're still talking about a VAT increase, albeit a smaller one, or have other solutions been found? Have other solutions been found, including that contentious issue around the proposal that says if we don't increase taxes, we may have to reduce the social relief of distress grant, which currently stands at 370 Rand a month. Weigh in on that conversation as well. Also, weigh in with solutions. Where should the finance minister find the money to be able to spend on the programs that we need? In this hour, I'll be in conversation with Dr. Alice Murray, and we'll be talking about the increase in cash in transit robberies in KwaZulu-Natal. Last year, that province contributing some 27% of all CIT robberies in the country. And we are told this year has gotten off to a rather brutal start as well. So that conversation coming up at about 8:20. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
I see several of your suggestions that have already come through. So let me take them and hear what you are suggesting as far as the budget is concerned. Let me start with this one.
Good morning, Tulas and SAFM listeners. I would like to propose, why can't we raise tax for mining companies? I mean, it's our minerals. Puta here from Pretoria.
Sure. No, thank you for that. I'm not sure how it all works, so I don't even want to try and advance any theory. The reason I say that is that I'm wondering if there's a special taxation dispensation for mining companies as opposed to companies in general. The corporate tax, remember, the finance minister says already that's really high by comparison with other countries. So I don't know, maybe there's a suggestion there about a mining industry related taxation regime, and I would say perhaps that would need to take into account the state of the mining industry itself, the whole debate about whether it's a sunset industry or a sunrise industry.
Morning to the season, it's MVP. Isn't it possible that there should be a vote on what needs to be cut? Because I don't think the grant is the solution, but the bloated cabinet, for me, it's actually the solution. These guys are driving expensive cars and they're doing nothing, wasting the taxpayers' money. So let there be a cut on their expenses.
Yeah, no, that's a constant suggestion. I've heard many people saying that, and it's a valid one. I mean, you know, the number of people that serve in the national executive is quite significant, especially in this particular administration. But I always wonder, though, I suppose every cent counts when you're trying to realize savings. But I always wonder, how much can we really save? Even if we were to scrap all deputy ministers, cut the cabinet to, I don't know, from 32 ministers to 15, we would realize savings. But I always feel like we would still need to do far much more. By the estimations of, is it Action SA, that we're talking about scrapping deputy ministers about a week ago, they were saying you would save about R1 billion. In the current context, you're looking at you needing to save 56 billion rand, 58 billion rand. So you'd still need to do a whole lot more. But let me take a call from Isaac in Limpopo. Isaac, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about the SRD grant?
Yes, good morning, Thulasizwe.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Very well. How are you?
Our government is losing track, ne?
It's losing track. How? Tell me.
Yeah, they are losing track. Look at Thulasizwe. During COVID-19, there were a lot of job losses, right? So what is that government is expecting to those people who are distressed and they are rejecting their rights actually? Okay, look now, there are high crime in South Africa. So they are still extending the rate of crime, the rate of violence to the distressed people. We are South African. What if government is in need to cut the budget of SRD and create jobs for us to work? We have qualifications.
Yeah.
We do have qualifications. I'm an electrical engineer by profession. I went to school for electrical engineer, and I'm unemployed, and right now I'm dependent on that 370 rand.
Wow. Yeah.
So how do government expect me to live with?
Yeah. Sure. Isaac, powerful. Thank you for that. That's
man.
powerful from your side. I mean, thank you for that, Isaac. That these are the voices, right? These are the voices you need to be hearing, even as you're talking at a high level, and you're talking revenue, and you're talking expenditure, fiscal framework, etc., etc. The voices, such as the one you just heard from Isaac, these are the voices that need to be in the room so that you hear from them. And I'm really glad we took that call. Bishop Maroti, good morning to you. You are in Joburg. You also want to weigh in on the budget.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is Bishop Maroti Mashashane.
Yes.
I think also, as we are looking at the issue of the budget, we need to also change the way we're doing things. I'm referring actually to the government. Number one, I'm going to mention three things quickly. Firstly, it cannot be correct to us that we are told, and the report always suggests that inmates or prisoners, they are spending or they are claimed 390 rands per prisoner per day, which works to 140,000 per prisoner per, annually. You know, so that does not make sense when you expect people who are outside law-abiding citizens to live on 370 per month, while that amount for somebody who is a lawbreaker is spent per day. And then what special meal are they really getting?
So
somebody is looting.
So your second suggestion?
Firstly, let us so the first one in conclusion of that is that let's reduce the budget that is given to correctional service. Second one, let us get rid of the tenders in the law firm panels. The matters that need to be sorted, like you are talking about the old man who sued the state for negligent whatever. Those cases, they are piling up in courts, and the state attorneys, they don't go and appear for the state. They use their friends, the law firm. They keep on postponing the matters, and to defend a case or a claim of 2 million, they end up spending 500 million paying their friends and sharing. That is another corruption.
What's your third one, Bishop Marot?
Change the method.
Yeah. The last one, please.
The third
for me.
one, indeed. Thank you. The third one, being the last one, will be to increase the corporate tax, which you are saying, the minister is saying, compared to other countries, it's already higher than others. That is nonsense. In 2020, during the COVID, the corporate tax was taken down from 28% to 26% to accommodate the companies. So why don't you take it up to 27 at least, which according to my calculation, it can give something like 14 billion back into the
Gotcha. Bishop, gotta leave it there. Thank you. That's Bishop Maroti there in Joburg. Among the claims, of course, that he makes is about prisoners receiving 390 rand a month. I don't have the facts around that, and if anyone knows in the official positions, would welcome you setting the record straight around that. Do prisoners earn 390 rand per month? I do not know the facts around that. And in fact, we'll try and verify that and try and see if we can verify that claim. But the other suggestions that Bishop Maroti was making, well taken on board. France in Centurion, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about doing away with traditional leader payments. Would that help us with the budgeting?
It will, since they don't even have the mandate to serve the community. I mean, the Venda king there, the Zulu king. What mandate do they have to serve the community? We struggle with water, with development, with roads and everything, and yet they scoop home with millions and millions. For what? Why do we still have the two leadership system in the country? We've voted, we have chosen the democracy way. Why do we still have the traditional system that we need to maintain?
Would that not be a complete dismantling of our Africanness, France? Given that even the powers you're talking about were whittled down, especially during the period of colonialism and apartheid, would we not be completing that work that started and just basically completely dismantling anything that represents our Africanness?
It is costing us. The Indians don't have the king, the colors. You don't have colors king and everything. And then everything is helping the Indians, all the Indians. There's no important Zulu person that needs all the millions.
What about the rest of the Zulus?
Gotcha.
Then we need to take all these, all the grants to every paid there, not only a paid king.
All right, Franz, I hear you. Thank you for that. That's Franz in Centurion there. So lots of suggestions coming through about which path we should take to try and balance the books, right? Because the math ain't mathing as far as our finances are concerned. We'll continue the conversation with you a bit later on the show.
A convicted murderer on death row, a vicar in a quiet English town, and a maths teacher trapped in a cellar cross paths in the most unexpected way. Jefferson Grief is on death row in an American prison for brutally murdering his wife. But it turns out that Grief has a gift. He can solve crimes from inside his cell. English journalist Beth Davenport needs Grief's help. Janice, a woman who recently helped Beth, has gone missing. The last Beth heard from Janice? A text with a blurry image of a man lunging towards the camera. Will Grief crack the case in time? Exactly how is Janice's local vicar involved? And is it really possible to solve a crime before it is committed? Tune into Inside Man, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 12 February only on S3. Open up.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
24 minutes after 8, KwaZulu-Natal has had a brutal start to the year, with a recent report flagging the province as the most dangerous when it comes to cash-in-transit robberies. According to recent reports from the Cash-in-Transit Association, SITASA, KZN accounted for the highest proportion of CIT robberies in 2024 and continues to lead in 2025 with a worrying rise in incidents. Let's speak to Dr. Alice Murray, who is Incident and Analytics Manager at the Cash in Transit Association of South Africa, SITASA. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. How bad is the situation compared to other provinces in the country as far as cash in transit robberies are concerned in KwaZulu-Natal?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to your listeners. Yes, as you correctly state, we see that KZN has the highest percentage of incidents at this point in time. You refer to the newspaper article, but as of today, they are 33% of the incidents occurred in KwaZulu-Natal. So the three top provinces that we see is KwaZulu-Natal, then followed by Gauteng, also in the 20s, 26%. And then in the third position, it's the Eastern Cape with 13%. So we end off in 2024 also with KwaZulu-Natal as the top province, and then starting off this year as well. So for March, the few days that we are in March already, most of the incidents also happen in KwaZulu-Natal. So that's unfortunately the situation that we face with at this point in time.
Sure. So accounting for a third of all incidents last year, that's quite significant. What is your association's understanding of why these incidents are particularly high in that province?
There's usually different reasons why one province can be the highest risk province, because previously it was Eastern Cape where we saw quite a spate of cash in transit robberies. So KwaZulu-Natal, it depends, and I think all your listeners will know that most of the cash in transit robbers commit their crimes cross provincial borders. So it's not that these criminals just stay in one province and then commit the robbery in that province. So last week, for example, we saw a group of cash in transit robbers that committed a crime in the northwest, and some of those also came from, or they reside in a different province, but they come and commit the crime in a different province. So that is also one of the factors that we really struggle with. And I know that normally people would say, but the socioeconomic factors are also contributing, which is true. But a cash in transit robber starts off perhaps his crime by a need, because he needs money. But it's very, very quickly that need turns into greed. And that is what we are facing with nowadays. And yes, so they do their planning. Cash in transit robbers really plan their crimes very well. And then from there, what is important for them is to have a safe getaway and to make sure that there's limited times or chances of being apprehended. You know, they also want to get out of it with the loot, but safe and sound.
So some of the videos that we've seen in recent months evince and depict proper planning, as you say, but also military precision at the point at which the robbery is actually being carried out, with some people suspecting that perhaps there could be elements of people coming from other countries that have a background, and including people in this country also that have a background in military training. To what extent do you believe that to be a factor, and what do you know about the profile of a typical cash and transit robber?
You're quite correct with the precision and the training. So there's different roles to be played. For example, there's a stopper group that will make sure that the vehicle's been stopped and the bystanders also been stopped. Then there's different roles for shooters and bombers. So it depends. Certain criminals have certain skills. So obviously you would not take a person who's not a good shot to defend themselves, but they will do that, they get their training, and it is possible that they can get it from, that they come in with that skill from other countries. So we saw in the groups of cash in transit robbers that there's different nationalities working together. For example, in the beginning of the year, last year, there was a bomber that specifically comes from a neighboring country, and his skill was just to place the explosives and detonate it. So there is really some skills coming in, but then they also go to shooting ranges and exercise, because that's their income. And they practice and to better themselves.
Lastly, Doc, I do need to ask you this question. What's your comment about the role of intelligence and disruption of the planning? Because I'm listening to you talking about the level of planning that goes into it and the number of people involved. And I say to myself, if you have strong intelligence, there are so many points along the value chain at which you could have intercepted, gained information, and been able to intervene very early on. Just from an untrained perspective, a layman's perspective, I would say there's a failure there. It's something that involves so many people. If you are organized, you should be able to crack it.
Thulasizwe, that's correct. I think it is a well-known fact that we in South Africa need more intelligence, information that can be put into intelligence, because there's always someone who sees something or knows something. But unfortunately, that is one of the shortcomings that we as well as the police and the cash in transit companies are working on. I mean, that is the only way that you can be preventative. And therefore, you would also see on our social media that we continuously ask the public to also participate. But then the other worrisome factor that comes in is that we see, for example, yesterday there was an incident in the Northwest, and then the community flocked to that crime scene and looted everything. So, it is a difficult situation because we need the community to stand up against this crime type. But then in the same fashion, they partake in a crime. So this is a really catch-22 situation. But you're quite right. We need to work towards getting more information and then stand up against criminals. You would see the past. Thank you so much.
I've got to leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Dr. Alice Murray, who is Incident and Analytics Manager at the Cash in Transit Association of South Africa. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, Senior Policy Specialist Neil Coleman says the social relief of distress grant should not be used to justify a 2% VAT increase. Finance Minister Godongwana has been criticized for suggesting to reduce the COVID-19 SRD grant or hike the value-added tax. Health activist Dr. Hosidi Klape says there should be no NHI without a well-functioning public health system. This after the Health Ombudsman found the management of Helen Joseph Hospital in Johannesburg was poor. And Canada's most populous province has imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States, this in response to tariffs imposed by Washington. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, try to avoid the R21 if you're moving from the Boksburg N12 side in towards OR Tambo International Airport this morning. It's been a horrific bus crash scene. It's on the R21 North at the split to the airport in the R24. So that section of roadway closed. Everyone being diverted off the Griffiths Road. So you come off 4 or 5 lanes and you sort of filter into a sort of a Griffiths Road onto alternative route. So it's very heavy. Stay off it. You could off-ramp the N12 at Jet Park or at Craft Road to hit some alternative routes. You'll probably run into some of that traffic diverting off the R21, but you'll avoid the R21 queue, and that's what you want to be doing this morning. Also, if you're heading to the airport on the R24 Albertina Sisulu Highway, that crash at Barbara Road's been there all morning. It happened before 6 a.m. Traffic still very heavy from the Edenvale exit, so you've got 2 big highways going into the airport and 2 big queues. Looks like an issue around Van Buren this morning, north and south all of a sudden getting heavy. That's up to Galulis or down towards the Heldenace interchange. And the R21, just a reminder, if you're leaving the airport, leaving Pretoria en route to the airport, that's quite slow. Just coming down past Tembisa into the roadworks there. All the obstructions around Shongweni, Key Ridge and Cliffdale are basically out of the way. The traffic is very busy, but it is starting to ease on your way to Pietermaritzburg. It's well off what it was earlier this morning in terms of delays. And Cape Town, N1, Clevercliff to City Centre stays busy. The N2 inbound still queuing up with big volumes from Jake's Kirkville Drive through to Hospital Bends. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
About doing sport when as I is the difficulty of the names. Abdeslam Wado
yeah,
is the coach of Marumo Gallants.
That's the one.
Well, I got that one right, but I mean, imagine if it's followed by Tsitsipas and then followed by
Shapovalov.
Tell me about Wado and what he's had to say about the little time he's getting with his players.
Tulas, apparently he's saying he's spending more time on the buses than on the training pitch, and he wants to protect his players, but the PSL, they just want to protect the match calendar. It's go, go, go. And the Marumo Gallants coach, he's a new coach, admitting he had no time training with players since taking over. The former Morocco international replaced Dan Malisela late last month and hit the ground running with wins over Orlando Pirates in the Betway Premiership, and they've progressed to the semi-finals of the Nedbank Cup, the 2 significant results so far. But with the quick turnaround of matches in all competitions since his arrival, Oadu has spent more time on the road than at practice.
No, I agree with you. It's unbelievable. Actually, in Europe sometimes we play every 3 days because if you play the European Cup, Champions League, Europa League, and the league, you can play every 3 days. But sometimes you have a break to give rest to the players.
Now, Stellenbosch FC are still seething after their controversial Nedbank Cup exit at the hands of Kaizer Chiefs, but they have little time to dwell. Up next, it's Orlando Pirates. Pirates are chasing a historic quadruple. The Stellies coach, Steve Barker, making it clear his team has had enough of refereeing decisions going against them, and they're taking that frustration straight into tonight's league clash at Athlone Stadium, 7:30 p.m, the kickoff. Elsewhere, Nottingham Forest have lost their appeal against a 1.7 million rand fine for a social media post criticising video assistant referee Stuart Atwell. They were fined by the Football Association for an attack on the integrity of a match official on an unparalleled scale. Now, Forest complained about 3 penalty decisions that went against them in their defeat at Everton on the 21st of April 2024. And finally, Formula One. Carlos Sainz has tempered expectations surrounding Williams' prospects in the 2025 Formula One campaign amid McLaren's claim that it could get amongst leading the group.
We are definitely not at the level we want to be yet, but Williams is in an upward trajectory. That is what motivates me. And it's one of the most historic teams, the second most successful in the history of Formula One, and I just want to be part of that process, and one day if we make Williams competitive again and we fight for the wins, feel proud of being part of that process.
And that's where we leave it for now. In the fast lane, there'll be more sport around 12:30 with John Hediker. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey, Ndaulen, good morning to you once again. Tell me about the building confidence. Which one is that now in terms of the many measures that we track?
So this one is by FNB, and it just measures confidence around different subsectors of the building sector, the construction sector. So it measures confidence from hardware retailers to architects to contractors, etc., etc. So some good news coming through on that front, with the building confidence index edging higher to 41 in the first quarter of 2025, indicating a slight improvement in sentiment within the construction sector. But nearly 60% of respondents remain dissatisfied with business conditions. Now, while the overall index remained largely unchanged, confidence levels varied across different industry participants. Hardware retailers, quantity surveyors, and building subcontractors reported increased sentiment, whereas main contractors, architects, and building material manufacturers saw a decline. Now, main contractors' confidence dropped 6 points to 45 due to deteriorating activity levels and profitability. According to FNB senior economist Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, non-residential building activity continues to outperform residential construction. The residential sector seems to be struggling despite recent interest rate cuts. Architects, in the meantime, the confidence on that front fell for the second consecutive quarter, with municipal inefficiency, particularly delays in approving building plans, being a major concern on that front. In contrast, hardware retailers recorded their highest confidence levels in 3 years, driven by strong sales growth. The sector remains mixed, with contractors anticipating more work in the coming months, but risks persist, particularly if demand does not increase as expected.
And in Ndaulen, we've been hearing from the property sector about what their expectations are for the retail sector. Tell me a bit more about that.
And this, of course, is according to the South African Property Owners Association's latest retail trends report. They say property owners are optimistic about the coming months, expecting more foot traffic to surpass pre-pandemic levels and potentially reach highs last seen in 2016. This comes after a slow start last year, where foot traffic in malls picked up only towards the end of the year, approaching 2019 levels. Now, the number of shoppers visiting major malls continued to rise in the fourth quarter of 2024 at a slower pace, though. Monthly trading density grew 2.2% year on year, leading to a 1.4% increase in spend per head. Now, SAPOA says while the country's major malls have trailed behind the broader retail sector in terms of growth, they have shown resilience, with trading density growing in line with inflation. Now, regional shopping centers foot traffic remained over 10% below pre-pandemic levels, but super regional and small regional centers were nearing their December 2019 level. And I thought to myself, that's very interesting, because even when I do shop, I do avoid the bigger malls and go to a local shopping center that has maybe like a supermarket and a Clicks,
absolutely.
Yes, so you can see those trends also playing out. Now, 91 recently noted that rental growth was emerging in the retail sector, supported by low vacancies, greater tenant affordability, and high sales growth. Now, despite positive trends, gross retail growth slowed slightly, easing from 3.6% to 3.2% year on year.
All right, lastly, Ndaulen, on this Tuesday, what kind of a day can we look forward to in the markets?
Things aren't looking good, Tulas. It looks like local markets are poised for another day of red screens following international peers. In company news, earnings still rolling in, and today the spotlight is on ABSA, Home Choice and Property Group Attack. On the currency front, the local unit quite stable against the dollar, sitting at 18.31 to the greenback this hour. Then over in Wall Street, consumer inflation data in focus as traders await that print for clues on the Fed's next rates move. Now, ahead of the release, the futures, futures in the States are in the green. And then looking at Asian stocks, recession fears really weighing on sentiment with stocks in the red.
She's always right on the money. That's Ntaoleng Lechela. She's kept you updated over the last 2 hours here on the Morning Brief.
So you've heard OUTsurance clients talking about all the money they saved when they switched. You've thought about getting a quote, but you're not sure if they could save you money on your car insurance or if it's worth the effort. Well, make today the day you get an OUTsurance quote. SMS OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. If OUTsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you're a winner, like Tulani.
Fast, helpful, efficient, everything was so smooth. I saved 530 bucks.
Make today the day you switch and save. SMS OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. With OUTsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Another conversation we started yesterday that we'd like to take forward has to do with the proposal by President Cyril Ramaphosa around hijacked buildings and how they can be used in light of the recently signed Expropriation Act. You will remember that the President has called for the full implementation of the Expropriation Act, positioning it as a critical tool in addressing urban decay in Johannesburg. The President's remarks came during his visit to Gauteng as part of a 2-day supervisory tour amidst ongoing G20 meetings. Highlighting the challenges of hijacked buildings, poor infrastructure and rising crime, President Ramaphosa emphasized that the Expropriation Act would help reclaim these properties and repurpose them for the public good. So let's take forward the conversation. I'm joined by Angela Rivers, who is the General Manager of the Joburg Property Owners and Managers Association. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So it's a widely debated proposition by President Ramaphosa. He says implement the Expropriation Act, expropriate those buildings, repurpose them. He's got the support of the Deputy Minister, but I get the sense that not necessarily that of the Minister in whose domain the Act actually resides. What's your position as the Property Owners and Managers Association?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on your show. So look, in theory, the Expropriation Act could be used, but only on abandoned buildings, in my opinion, because the biggest problem that we have with hijacked buildings is that you have to provide temporary emergency accommodation for the people living in those buildings. So, generally a hijacked building is so overcrowded, you would need 2 new buildings to decant the tenants from the hijacked building into a new building. So while in theory it would work if the building was already abandoned and not necessarily hijacked. And I mean, that's the issue that we've had with hijacked buildings from the beginning, is the lack of temporary emergency accommodation, the lack of the city following its own bylaws and building laws in the first place. Yeah.
So you would call for an approach that has precision in it, that targets abandoned buildings separate from hijacked buildings, because there's a difference, no?
Absolutely. And you can't assume that every hijacked building has necessarily been abandoned by the owner. You'll probably find the owner has spent millions on legal fees, getting eviction orders, following all the processes, and is kind of stuck in a position where they don't know what to do anymore, and they've lost control of their building. So they haven't necessarily abandoned it. They've just lost control. And to be honest, there's very few empty, abandoned buildings left in the inner city, because the minute a building is empty, it's an opportunity for hijackers to move in.
Yeah, and tell me about that particular problem, because part of the argument is that these abandoned buildings that get hijacked contribute to the decay in the inner city. You represent most of the landlords in Johannesburg's inner city. Just share with me that experience. What's the consequence of buildings being abandoned and then getting hijacked in the way we describe?
So the biggest issue that you'll have is, I suppose the biggest issue for the city themselves is the fact that a hijacked building is not paying for utilities or rates. So the city loses a huge amount of money on lost services through electricity and water that's being stolen, and obviously their property rates are not being paid. From a landlord's point of view, and I can give you a great example, there's a building in Berea called Casimir, which is owned by the city, and it was initially the city's temporary emergency accommodation, which got hijacked by the residents. One of our landlords owns the building next door, and it costs them over 200,000 Rand a month on lost revenue, paying extra services for security, pest control. The way that the tariffs are structured, that even if your flat is empty, you still have to pay sewer and refuse on that empty flat. So it's almost over R1 million a year that they're losing just being next door to a hijacked building.
So from what your members share with you, Angela, and your own experience, who collects the rental in these hijacked buildings? Because I heard a news item saying that's part of the difficulty as these buildings are being investigated. Do we have a profile of the typical building hijacker who then becomes landlord and collects the rental at the end of the month?
Absolutely. We have established that there are syndicates that will manage a hijacked building. So you'll have someone who's collecting the rent, someone who is the strong, the bodyguard or the enforcer. And then there's obviously the hijacker themselves that's collecting and pocketing the money. But within that as well, and I mean, this is always quite a controversial topic, but one of the reasons why I think that hijacked buildings have been allowed to go on for so long is because obviously officials somewhere along the line are getting paid in order to look the other way. Because there's no way that, you go into a building and there's sewage and water pouring down the stairs and the infrastructure and there's no lifts or fire protection, and that, they're passing any kind of building inspection or bylaw enforcement.
So lastly then, let me ask you a rather controversial question. Yesterday when I spoke to Thulasizwe Simelane, the Deputy Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, he was saying it should be Route 1, that the expropriation should happen without compensation. Particularly, he was very specific that why should we compensate people who've already engaged in the kinds of crimes that we are talking about? If we make the separation, Angela, between abandoned buildings that get hijacked, where the owner has abandoned the building, versus the majority of the cases where you say actually the owners are there, they themselves are frustrated by this phenomenon. What do you think about that proposition that says for those that were abandoned, the owner has no interest, has not shown interest in a significant amount of time, it's been hijacked and it's contributing to urban decay? Should expropriation, where compensation is nil, be the route one?
I think I've seen cases over the last couple of years where owners have lost their buildings, they've been hijacked, they've stopped paying utilities, the utilities could be sitting at 2.5 million Rand, and they've walked away and they've said, please just take the building. So I think there are incidences where it would work. And I think there are probably some people who have either left the country or just given up and have said, well, this is no longer an asset, it's become a liability. And in those cases, I think it would work. I just want to note, and this is very important, which everyone is kind of looking over, they're not paying much attention to it, but the bottom line is the city owns, and this comes directly from the MMC of Public Safety. He said in his interview last week that the city has 30 buildings that are hijacked, that are owned by the city. We should be focusing on those buildings first. There's no need to expropriate yet while we've got 30 city-owned hijacked buildings. That it's an easy fix, and it'll also prove to the general public that not only are they looking after their own house, but they're actually capable of turning these buildings around.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. Really insightful conversation we've had. That's Angela Rivers. She's General Manager of the Joburg Property Owners and Managers Association.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still looking at 2 delays on your way towards Tambo International Airport this morning. The earlier one is on the R24 at Barbara Road. That's a crash that happened before 6 a.m. It's still there. If you're going through Galulis to get to the airport, that's a big queue, almost back to this sort of N12 R24 split out through Edenvale and out towards that Barbara Road exit. The other issue that we're dealing with is this very significant bus crash incident on the R21 North at the R24 split and the airport off-ramp. So that section of the R21 has been closed from Griffiths Road. So there's really big backlogging of traffic coming off the N12 up through that sort of Jet Park area, up to the Griffiths Road closure, and then onto alternative routes. To avoid that, you could off-ramp at Jet Park or at Craft Road and hit some alternative routes just to avoid that R21 North snarl up towards Griffiths. Just staying in the east, there's also a breakdown at Atlas Road, so coming through Benoni to Boksburg on the N12, that is quite slow. The N3 is jammed at Van Buren both ways, and if you're leaving Pretoria on your way to the airport, a reminder of the roadworks just opposite Tembisa before you get to the Bopsfontein exit, still causing delays as well. Going out of Durban towards Pietermaritzburg, Cliffdale still slow from Key Ridge. It's well off its worst, but there's still a decent sized queue from Key Ridge up through the work zone at Cliffdale. We had traffic stacked for over an hour earlier this morning around a multiple series of incidents. Cape Town, pretty busy on the N1 from Plattercliff Hill. You'll see traffic all the way through to the city centre. Marine Drive behind that's queuing up through Pardon Island, and Marine Drive also queuing coming through Milnerton as it can do down towards that Woodbridge Island, Loxton Road junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Bafana are taking on Lesotho at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium on the 21st of March 2025 at 6 p.m. for the FIFA World Cup 2026 qualifier. Come early, dressed to commemorate Human Rights Day, and support Bafana for a chance to win prizes from our host, Limpopo Government and Polokwane Municipality. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets start from 70 Rand for adults with special rates available at 40 Rand for children under 12 at all Ticket Pro outlets. If you can't make it to Polokwane, catch the game live on SABC2 at 6 p.m. or visit sabcsport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
A quick voice note and then I'll take your calls.
Thulasizwe, why look like the cabinet is no-go area in terms of cutting cost, and a bloated executive in the public sector? Why look like those are no-go areas when you want to cut cost?
It shouldn't be. It absolutely shouldn't be. And I think there's no debate that our cabinet right now is bloated. There's not even been an attempt to counter-argue that, oh, no, it's not. It absolutely is bloated, despite undertakings for many, many years that, oh, no, we're going to have a lean and mean cabinet. But here we are, sitting with a really large executive. Let me take a call from Karabo in Sanin. Good morning to you, Karabo. Cash and transit robberies on your mind this morning. Short and sharp for me, please.
Yes, Thulas. You know, Thulas, I want to talk about the CIT, Thulas. You know, our intelligence, crime intelligence, Thulas, I think it's on a low level, Thulas. really on a low level. Like even like National Commissioner Fanny Masemola to us, I don't think he's doing much more to us, like in his effort to try and like reduce like the CIT robberies. Like I don't know, in a month in South Africa, like there's more than 3 CITs, and then it just keeps quiet, like nothing is happening. I think like in Kantlam Kwana Tulas in KZN, he can do a much better work in his position as a national commissioner. I think it's time for Mr. President Ramaphosa to remove Fanny Masemola because like his time is up.
Sure.
You know,
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I hear you, Karabo. Thank you for that. And the funny thing is, at some point, I believe cash and transit robberies were on the decline, right? They really were. There was a point where if you were going for those crime stats briefings, it was a small number. But now it would seem that we are dealing with a problem that's on the rise, at least in KwaZulu-Natal and other provinces that were mentioned earlier on. Nzomane in eThekwini, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about buildings. Are these the buildings that have been hijacked?
No, not hijacked. Thank you, Sudas. In fact, first things first, your nickname now is TS. Just for the show.
A lot of people call me that, yes.
All right. Anyways, first things first, I'll be short. There's a building at CR Swat police station which used to house police officials. That building has been abandoned. I think it's 4 or 5 years now. I'm not accurate. However, the police are renting a building also there by where they are carrying on their administration. It's an administration building. It's been rented out. It's not owned by the police. However, there's a building that they left. It is abandoned, which should have been renovated, and then stop renting the building from someone else and use that building to house the administration of the police.
Gotcha.
And then there's another one now for the Durban municipality. It's down the Victoria Embankment, down there by the harbour. That building, the municipal officers boycotted because there was no air conditioning, no lifts, and all that stuff. And then they abandoned that building. And now the municipality is renting an embassy building on Smith Street because they don't want, whether they don't want or they are not, I'm not sure. But those 2 buildings now, they are abandoned, and departments are renting out buildings from some other people. Shouldn't you think that maybe government should be renovating these buildings that they own and then use their own buildings to house their employees?
Absolutely.
The other one is the SASA building also. SASA building. They're also down by the Victoria Embankment. Anyone who stays in Durban will know. Down the Victoria Embankment. Huge SASA building. They also evacuated the building. It's not being used, and they are renting somewhere at the Durban station. They're renting the properties there.
Let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for that. I've got a feeling that the MEC for infrastructure in KwaZulu-Natal may want to consult with you because you have been keeping track of all of those buildings that are either abandoned, are dilapidated, whereas government finds itself having to rent out space from the private sector. Eunice, unfortunately, I will have to take you tomorrow on Helen Joseph's. That's how we come to the end of today's edition of The Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for your engagement this morning. The Talking Point with Kethi Motlatlana is up next here on SAFM after the news.
In our top stories, policy specialist speaks on SRD grant to justify VAT increase and calls for a well-functioning public health system. Good morning. Senior policy specialist Neil Coleman says the social relief of distress grant should not be used to justify a 2% VAT increase. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has been criticised for